My name is Tarek. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Counterpoints. Whatever episode it is, it's sponsored by CS Money. That's all that actually matters. That's right, sold out. It only took about 20 years. Now I'm just available to the highest bidder. I mean, soon I'll probably be playing for fucking Astralis or something. Who knows? Then again, maybe not actually, because apparently those guys, were free or some shit. And I definitely do not work for free. I think everyone knows that at this point in time. I think everyone knows even if you pay me, I'll still complain about the fries being cold. Because listen, I don't buy motherfucking fries to eat them cold. If you do, you can have mine when I'm finished with them, because I only eat the first 5 anyway. That's all that they're good for. A lot of theories packed in there. There was a lot to unpack there, Moses. But we're back. Our guest for this episode is Zeus. And he's Brazilian, so not much to talk about. Probably just gonna, CS Go 2, Source Engine, not a lot going in the world, not a lot happened in Brazil. No, obviously, right, listen, I'm just gonna be straight up right now, and I'm gonna say something that's like a mild call out, which is this. When people have these Twitter disputes, one thing I know, and listen, understand this, fans, I know this, everyone comes off like shit on Twitter. No, don't say just you do, Thorin. Everyone does. As in anyone cool in real life never comes off as well on Twitter. And in fact, there's a lot of people, forget just Brazilians, there's a lot of people who are like in esports. Online, they might seem really obnoxious or like way too harsh with how they tweet. You meet them in real life, they're like sweethearts, they're like cool guys, they seem reasonable, like they're not so aggressive. Because the problem is, it's like when you're on the internet, you don't see the other person. It's like a war zone. You feel like you're battling everyone. Like, I get it, right? Everyone goes a bit over the board. But my problem is this. If everyone's going to do the tweets and have the drama, what you actually need to do, listen, I'm not saying it just because I do a show. You don't have to do it with me, but do a show afterwards. Like, you know what? Fuck it. Go on HLTV Confirmed or something. Go on some sort of a talk show afterwards and give like the proper side of it. Give like your full thoughts on it. If you went too harsh, walk a bit of it back, etc. Because one of the things that killed me about this recent drama, I mean, there was so much of it. There was like the Furia replay thing. Then there was the Leaf thing. Then there was the fucking Gaules. It never stopped, right? When all this stuff was happening, the thing that tilted me the most, Zeus, is if you actually know people like Fallen, Fur, etc., like in real life, these guys are chill as fuck. Like, these are some of the best people to have a beer with. I've told people this story before just because of our history. Like, I still see these guys if I'm at an event, talk the game, chop up stuff, ask them what's going on. Like, they never would come off the way they do online. So I always feel like, because they fuck up online, they then just go silent and just don't say anything. It's like, I feel like they could actually sort of like resolve it if they just were a bit more public in that sense, like just sort of like tell people, yeah, I know I was too harsh on that, but here's my thoughts, here's my real thoughts on it, not just a tweet,
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on you on that, and not just in regards to them. I think it's like this even started out. I think the world right now, we live in a weird place where, like Twitter, how can we try to justify things with 144 characters? It's like, I can't explain to you how my day went. How are we going to get into some harsh topics and something like that? And yeah, like accusations, everything goes out. But I think that you're right. Like, since things aren't that simple, let's try to explain ourselves. Everyone's human. Everyone's going to have rights and wrongs, and everyone's going to fuck up every once in a while. And it's like evolve and say you're sorry when that happens. Or if you're right, fight for what you believe in. But I don't know. I think that like you're saying, we're strong personalities in general as a Brazilian, so we should be representing in that way, right? At least in what we can. We're not going to be right when we do it, but just give our thoughts. It's just as well, as sponsors, orgs, everything like that. Sometimes, like, this goes for players and for organizations, for everyone. We're held back sometimes by some things where even if we want to, we come out like a pussy, but like you have to follow your contract, and if they say don't do it, you ultimately just don't do it.
Oh, no, to be fair, when I think about it, I could imagine, believe it or not, Moses, like someone from the MIBR org might have just said, please just stop all tweeting and all communication online for the next month.
I'm not there, and this isn't because it's MIBR, but I guarantee you that happens in some sense. Everyone's approach to PR nowadays, go dead silent, like you said, like, or cut it off, try to cut the problem at the root so that it doesn't expand. But I don't know, me as a person, that doesn't help us fix it, right? We're just, okay, now we made our shit and we leave it. That doesn't sit right.
I think the biggest thing that we all forget on Twitter is that, like, once we put a tweet out, like, we no longer, it's not like having a conversation the way that we do now where we can, talk in depth, as you mentioned, can go on a talk show. But once you put something out on Twitter, you no longer control the conversation. Like, your opinion is there, and the conversation becomes everyone else what they think of what you said. And in that sense, Like even when this whole Leaf thing happened, I don't really blame Fallen or Tarek so much for those tweets. Like they made dumb tweets that made the situation worse. But I mean, everyone does that because you forget how quickly this is going to spiral out of control. Like there's no reason to think that you're going to start an entire community-wide debate, or you're going to initiate a Brazilian community versus the world's community debate, off of one or two tweets. And I think everyone kind of needs that wake-up call once in a while that in our positions we can start really, really weird conversations. And I forget that all the time, to be honest with you.
Because, by the way, if people don't know, I'll just say it at the beginning, just because this was my intention to do what we just said. What I actually did, Zeus knows this, I reached out to Zeus as soon as that happened. I actually did to a bunch of other people as well. And I basically said to them what I've just said there. I just said, dude, we need to actually do a real talk show about this where we can, represent all the positions. We can talk about all the stuff that matters. So actually all the stuff Gaules was bringing up about racism, which, listen, he was doing it as a tactic to, take blame of himself. But it's a real issue. We can talk about that too. So I said what we should do is do, an all Brazilian episode, and we'll get a bunch of people from the scene, and the idea is we'll just host a discussion. The problem is, and this I think people could understand why, and some of what Zeus just said counts, most people just wanted to not talk about it anymore. They already felt like so much damage had been done, there's nothing to be gained from it. They, basically, because things have started to die down, they just wanted to leave it at that. At this point in time, the only drama is just Gaules and his fans. That's it. That's kind of a separate issue at this point. So, unfortunately, some of the people I would have liked to bring on the show, because I wanted to bring people from a bunch of different teams. The show wasn't about being MIBR biased or anything like that. It'd be fair. You could have just a bunch of Brazilians, then we'd talk it all through, especially because one thing I think is very interesting, I wanted to actually get your take on this, Zeus, is... even though the fans generally in Brazil, I remember when they supported Immortals as well, they're just fans of whoever the good Brazilian teams are. It's not like the fans are the players and the players aren't the fans. But actually, in terms of the players, I want to get your take on this. I feel like even though MIBR did fuck up a whole bunch the last few months, what's made them also look bad, and this isn't a negative what this person did, is that the Furia guys have done an amazing job of not doing that. They haven't, so far, put a foot wrong. They haven't gotten involved in any weird drama. They actually seem to do a very good job not responding harshly in the MIBR dispute over the replay. So, they actually seem like they've kind of got, a good sense for how to handle it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more complex than that. But for the Furia side, they definitely have it under control. That's kind of why I think some of the reasons, how we get into these positions is... sometimes just being quiet, it makes things go away. And from a professional point, that's what the organization wants, right? No drama. But like I said, for a personal point, I'm not sure that's the right way. Even the Furia players, I'm sure as much as what they're doing is 100% correct, they can help diffuse the situation as much. But sometimes trying to diffuse it, we're going to get into a worse position. As for everything else that you said before, I agree. It's really complicated in the general sense just to be doing all of this, to having these conversations and how these things are doing. And I'm not going to get into Gaules, if it's a tactic or something like that, but I agree. It's 100% a subject that should be talked about, right? Not only that, I think the world isn't black and white. Just because someone roots for MIBR doesn't mean they're not rooting for Furia or for EG on some level, right? Just because he did something, if it was attacked, it doesn't mean it's not there. There is some truth in everything, and we're gonna get to the serious parts and to the fun parts of it as well, right? But for me, I just want to put the first disclaimer out that since we are gonna be getting to these subjects, that this is Zeus' opinion. It's no one else, and I can make mistakes and I can be wrong, and I probably am because I'm not an anthropologist or any shit like that, right? But I'm going to try to, at least having been someone that's been through the US, through all this other side, and now I'm in Brazil back again. I grew up here. I can kind of see both sides. So as much as I'd like that there was someone here, hopefully we can try to get everyone just moving a little bit better direction in this topic at least.
Yes, and by the way, since we only have Zeus in, we don't have a big round table, we'll just talk about this in the first part, and then we'll just talk some CS. We'll talk about the best teams in the Americas, and there's a lot we can get into there. It's actually quite interesting. So, right, let's start out in the first issue, which was I actually want to ask, first of all, just your thought on the MIBR Furia replay topic. Because on that particular topic, I've made my opinion pretty clear. That was another topic where I tried to actually get people to come on. For that one, I wanted to have an MIBR player, a Furia player, and an admin. I was trying to get one of those ESL admins that are legit, know the rules and stuff. Because what I wanted to do with that is, I've made this point before, and a lot of people missed it, I think, is even though, listen, I think personally, you shouldn't tweet asking people to do a replay, etc. You shouldn't put pressure on them because technically in the rules, they are allowed to say, the rules say I don't have to and I can just do a restart. But what I get is this, and this is a point no one seemed to represent. I know why Fallen and those guys were tweeting though, is because if you know that the rule isn't always fair, and this is something very interesting because actually I saw that the main ESL admin, Mihao, ex-ESL admin, said actually that the thing with that rule that doesn't always work is, you know where it's designed, like if you didn't take any damage yet, you can ask for a restart. He said there's actually teams have cheated using that basically. Like basically what they could do.
Power outlets, right?
No, he said that some of them would do like a stack on one site on like an important round. And then if no one came there, they would just say to the admin, like, restart please, because no one had shot them yet. So if they'd fucked up the stack, like, well, the thing is technically that rule applies. Like you could say it, right? You could just claim, yeah, my internet's lagging and, oh, it's ping. So his point he was making was the rule can't apply in every scenario. Like it just can't cover everything. So what I wanted to have a discussion about basically was like, how do we change the rules? Because my point is this. I think what happens is people like Fallen know that rule doesn't always work. So their logic is, right, I can't change the rule. They feel like that at least. So they think the only way I can affect things is I can ask the other team. And if they both agree, maybe we get the restart, right?
I think partially yes, but there's more to it, right? So like we were talking about Bill Burr, if a house gets on fire, we don't just get there, we sift through the debris and figure out what happened before. In this case, context is important. Like what was the relationship between MIBR and Furia? One thing is the rules, and the next thing is you're playing against a bunch of group of guys that you know, right? Like you've had more day-to-day experiences than a regular team that you're just placing off. So 100% the rules, Furia were in the rights, and I defend them, and I'm not going to defend like going to Twitter. I think that's not the right avenue to do it. Like everyone should know that, right? It's frustration that happens. I think this is my thought. I haven't talked to them from that, but I get where the frustration comes from because I think that what happened was it wasn't that Furia said it's a lack of communication. Are we going to restart? No reply for 20 minutes, something like that. Like these are people that you're used to talking to, right? No reply. If it was Gary or someone that told them not to do it, they're following orders. So like a lot of things gets missed in that context. But then they're like, no, the damage happened before the round, right? Or after. And MIBR is like, no, it was after. He already clearly froze. And like, I think at least from the Brazilian culture, that lack of faith in the words of someone who kind of helped bring up the scene, not that it matters, the trophies or things that they did. It's just these are people that, in theory, helped everyone get there. So I get why they have that feeling. I'm not saying it's correct, but I get it. So for the rules, this is going to go into the leave thing as well. I think tournament organizers and admins and all like that, I think they do a good job with the power they have, but we have to give them more power. Rules, like in my mind, like, yeah, what are the rules there for? They're there to help the situation be as fair as possible. If something isn't covered by the rules or it's out of the scope of the rules, someone has to have the balls to do it or the power to do that, right? It's not easy, but back at situations were different. But back in the day, like we do organize local LAN tournaments here in Brazil where people would call cheaters. What we do is we'd get a group of players to analyze and some decision. Of course, things are bigger. There are bets now. There's organizers. Everything exposed, but in these things, some admin's going to have to make a decision. It's the same thing as the HICO. The players shouldn't be in the ones in that position. So someone just stop, analyze it, and there's going to be a judgment. Whether it's fair, there's going to be some correct judgments and some wrong. But in the end, ultimately, it balances itself out, right? Like, right? That's what I think about that situation, how it should be.
Yeah, I think, well, the importance is, right, it's the spirit of the rule, not the rule itself, is what you're supposed to adhere to. And for me, there's very few tournament admins, I think, who have the authority, the willingness to have that kind of responsibility put on their shoulders to make the determination. When I saw the situation, for me in my head, if I was the tournament admin, I would have said, we're going to replay this round because I think following this, yeah, there's damage done, but I don't care. The damage that was done did not have any lasting impact or did not have an impact on how the round was going to play out. And it was obviously very clear that Fur froze and just like crouch slid into a crosshair, and that was just stupid. So for me, that's a replay of the round. Now, that being said, if I was a tournament admin and MIBR tweeted that video the way they did during a live match before the resolution was out,
piss you off.
Yeah,
dude, it not just pissed me off. If I had the power, I probably would have made him forfeit the map. I just would have ended it. It's like you cannot use social media to that effect to influence what decision can be made, whether it's by the admin or by your opponents or whatever it might be. That's not a fair thing to put out if you're MIBR. I do realize tensions obviously run high, especially considering it's a major qualification. And on that note, here's an interesting take that I've kind of gone over in my head. I think the number one people that you can blame for this at the end of the day, if you trace it all the way back, is Valve. I love Beyond. We can all.
That's the way he's the great uniter is Jason Mozoto, because we can all agree fuck Valve, right?
I love Beyond the Summit. Beyond the Summit is not a tournament organizer that should ever be given control of a major qualifying event.
Oh, of course.
Their tournaments are for fun.
Yes.
Community-based. They've always been for enjoyment. They've always been just to have a good time and understand personality.
Or at least they better level up big time if you're going to do like a major qualifier. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Or like, and that's Valve that also needs to, by the way, give them, the resources needed to run an event of that quality and of that standard.
Yes.
Or if these, Valve needs to supply the tournament admins. You should be supplying something that can help them actually run the event.
That's actually a very legit idea. Like, imagine instead if it was like this. Listen, this is a pipe dream because we know Valve doesn't really do this stuff, and we all have these conversations about, they should also have like a map pool and design. It's like, it's all well and good having these they won't do it, so it's hypothetical, right? But put it this way, I think it would be awesome if, since we have this massive professional circuit, imagine if every big tournament, Valve themselves picked whoever the admin team was, or they had someone who understood that stuff, and he hires the admin. So it'd be people like Mihal from ESL and someone from Blast and someone from DreamHack, and the idea was it'd be the best admins. They'd be trained to a certain standard. He'd figure out what they need to know, the tests, and then what you'd do is they would supply them to all the big tournaments, and they'd all get paid. Ideally, they'd get the same day rate at every event, and then the idea is as well, you'd always be dealing with the same admin. So it's not like you go to DreamHack and it's this guy you've never met before, and then this, because also the other thing you don't want is I don't want to go to DreamHack in Sweden and then find out that the admin's Swedish and then I'm playing against Fnatic. That's just going to feel bad when the admin makes a decision. If I go to America, the admin's American, I'm going to think, but if it was one team of people, that's a good idea actually. That's legit.
They do that kind of that in football, right? You can't have someone from the country for adminning or refereeing in that case. I agree with that. I mean, of course, this is all brainstorming, but we'd have to make something where admins and people still have chances to climb the ranks in fairness. But I agree there should be some kind of governing body in that sense. Now that you mention it, sounds simple, and I don't know why no one's thought of it or done it.
Well, we'd also have to magically conjure people actually caring about competitive integrity in the Counter-Strike esports ecosystem. So there is that.
Yeah, but I'm sure if we get to that point, these referees are going to be really well paid.
That's true.
Come on, if you're the head one, if you're responsible and there's no one to take your job, it's like that anywhere else. If you're so good that you're irreplaceable, you're going to get a hell of a good pay. So there's going to be people willing to do it.
I mean, that's as Duncan mentioned, Mihao, the head admin formerly of all the ESL events since he's gone freelance, has been everywhere. Everyone wants to hire. Yeah, it's he's the best at what he does. Yeah,
that's also why I wanted him actually, or someone like him, to come on a show. Because the other thing I would like is, I think of the UFC, right? And in the UFC, listen, because it's a sport where if you're getting knocked out and a guy's still punching you, that's really dangerous. People are super critical of the refs in the UFC. Oh, yeah. But
did you see the latest one?
There was a pretty bad one. There are some, though, obviously the famous one is Big John McCarthy and Herb Dean, because those guys are known as the best. If they make a decision, people also go the other way. They trust those guys. They know they're the absolute cream of the crop of the admins. So basically, if they make a decision, even if you slightly disagree, you think, right, well, that guy is so good though at his job. He must have seen something I didn't see. If you had, at the moment, right, we know who that guy from ESL is. Most fans don't know who any of the admins are. That may be anyone. So I'd even like it if they were well paid and famous, so that they had status, so that way we can turn to this guy. Because the other reason why people who are fans might think players should decide everything is because they think, well, who's the admin? I don't know him. I know Fallen knows the game, and I know this guy from Furia knows the game. So that's another thing. Here's a little side angle on the thing that Moses said. That the problem is you want the spirit of the law, not just always the letter of the law. Because as I said, the letter of that law does allow people to do these stacks and then just pull the internet cable out and cheat, basically. So what you need, basically, and listen, it's not really a tangent I often go down, but in the Bible, there's the story of King Solomon, right? Who was supposedly the wisest man. Listen, so Bible corner, sit down, Moses. So the reason why Solomon was so wise, this all definitely happened, kids, was supposedly he asked God, he was a good guy before God or whatever. And then God said, like, ask me for anything. And obviously it was like a trick question, right? Because what you're supposed to say is like, give me all the money and women or whatever. But instead, Solomon, because he's such a straight fire baller, was like, give me wisdom. By the way, secretly, he just hacked the system. He knew if you have wisdom, you get all the money and the women anyway. Straight fire. So he got wisdom, right? So the joke is, in this scenario, there's a famous story, which I won't go into. You can go read it. That's right. I'm now recommending you read the Bible. That's what this show's become. Listen, Zeus's influence entirely wasn't the reason for this, but it's coming on now. It's a Christian podcast. I hope you'll know. Whatever. But anyway, famously, there's that story where that person comes with the baby, and then Solomon's so wise, he sort of knows how to resolve this super difficult situation that, like, there is no right answer to it, seemingly. And he basically figures out, like, what would be the spirit of this case? Like, how would I find out who this baby should belong to? And I mean, it was a story, but obviously he finds like the right answer in this case, right? That's what you need the admin to do. Because as Zeus is saying here, the letter of the law is designed so that if we have 1 million matches in a qualifier and a normal round happens where someone gets shot and there was damage done and then the guy lags out, right? We can't sit for 20 minutes in this like round 512 of the qualifier where it's like Team A versus the Billy Nobodies and they're all going to go out in the next 2 rounds. You have to just say, sorry guys, we're going to get through this qualifier. But when it's a real match with top pros and we've got time, I'd love it if, like you're saying there, Zeus, like they could actually take time and they could figure out, right, this is actually a situation where that rule shouldn't apply. And I'm a top admin, I'm a top coach, I know a guy who knows what he's talking about, and I'm going to make a decision. And like, I agree with you. I want to give power to these admins. I want them to be able to like have the responsibility for good or for bad for make the decision. Not least because then I know who we can go to if it doesn't work. Now we can go to the admin and say, right, how do we change this rule? I think that would be great.
Yeah, I'm 100% for it. And I think even down to the lower levels, it should be like this, of course, pipe dream, like, because I know the structure, everything that's needed for it. But even to the lowers, like, everyone should be on the fairest level of playing field, right? That's what competition is about. Me as a competitor, I can't, as much as I understand the business, I ultimately want to get to us to get to that position where everything is fair. So if we could have a system like that for everyone, like, it's a review, and with admins having more power, it releases players of responsibility, and players shouldn't have as much as they do. If I'm honest, I've been a player, I've been a coach. We as a community know the power that we have when we abuse some situations. It just is. Like, not saying everyone's like that, but it's situational when we're emotional, when we do things like it. I've done it before. I'm sure everyone's done it. Like, it's normal. It's understandable. I'm not saying it's correct, right? And admins would just take that power away. And with that, it does come that admins will need better I think compensation is everything, because with notoriety, everything, no one wants it's a big responsibility. You're dealing with a lot of big name players, big bettors, big everything. It's a gigantic responsibility, and no one's going to do it if you're like, oh, you're getting paid $2,000 a month to do this. The guy's like, oh, fuck no, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I'm good here. But if you treat them fair, where like you're the top of your field, you are set to a next standard. That's why we're going to pay you the next standard. I'm sure that over time, all our community in the esports scene, it would grow, and this would be the norm. It's something that would take a lot of time, but it would be gradual. I think it'd be perfect.
Also, whoever gets paid that much money, part of your job is to never open the Twitter notifications, because yours will just be ruined completely. Yeah. Whoever this admin is, you may as well just quit, because as Zeus said, not just the fans, the players, the bettors, listen, just don't even open it. It's going to be permanently at 99 plus.
Oh, it's you
don't need to open that. You don't need to. There's nothing in there for you. You know what's in there.
HLTV forum names, my God.
And that's why you are compensated so well for all the therapy you will need.
Danger money.
Oh, you think that doesn't play a part for players? Part of it's the mental harassment we all take. Jesus.
Sure.
Yeah, everyone on social media in this industry gets mentally harassed on Twitter.
All right, let's pivot then to the next one, which is the next one was the whole incident when Chaos played against MIBR and they won, which, by the way, isn't something recent. Like, that seems to happen every fucking time they play, seemingly, because for some reason Chaos Steel must just, like, in a past life have just been the guy who was fighting to the death with Fallen or something. Because every time he plays him, it's like he just takes 4 people and wins against MIBR. I don't know how he does it. I mean, the obvious joke all the Brazilian fans will tell me is they all just cheat. But we understand that's not what necessarily happened. So here's the problem with this topic I have, Zeus, is we're not going to do the most basic version of the analysis, right? Because where I want to get to like the core of it, there's 2 parts to this story. One is, it's again about using social media, because the real problem is, as you say, like Fallen, I even do think, right, listen, I know he definitely knows he has a lot of followers and people will see stuff, but I actually think the way he phrased that, where he fucked up was putting the words blatant aim locks. Yeah. You're never going to get out like you can't.
That word, it's just,
But if listen, here's the problem, right? And listen, I know about this myself as well. Sometimes you can say something that's a bit edgy and a bit clever, but if you phrase it correctly, you get away with it. Sometimes I didn't always phrase it correctly, that's right. But if you phrase it correctly, you get away with it, right? If he'd have just said, wow, Tarek, that many clips, but it didn't say blatant aim locks. It would, by the way, it would basically send the same message, like, I think this guy was probably cheating. 100%. But no one would, but he wouldn't be crucified. The problem is when he said 3 blatant aim locks, everyone's just like, right, he's saying he's cheating, which he sort of is, but it's like he almost like it's like he was too firm with what he said when he was trying to imply it, I think. So the question is, first of all, what do you think about publicly calling someone a cheater, basically? What's your thoughts on that?
So, again, directly you can't 100% confirm without having confirmations, as simple as that. So I wouldn't have handled it like that. But again, I do understand context, right? So imagine MIBR, major in Brazil. The life is on the line. You know that if you fuck up in this one more fuck up, you're out of, like, basically your chances are out, right? Like, you know you're super low now. And as soon as you get out of the match, you have like Twitter blowing up and you see these clips and you're in that emotion. And which is what I found weird. Is one of the things that I've learned way back in the day with LG and SK and all those guys, even Dead used to tell us this all the time. Never tweet something if you're too happy or too sad. It's like one of his main things that he used to tell us, because you're not going to get the correct wording of something, your correct emotion. And sometimes your emotion is going to change. And he sees it and he posts it. Like I said, me, Zeus, I don't care what people think. I think it was wrong of him to post that. I understand why he did it again, but I think that, like, how he, like you're saying, even that in the spirit of things, I wouldn't have gone even the edgy way in something like this. And it's not like trying to defend Leaf or anything like that, but when we're like, I used to think about the, like, just reverting to another story, like the FNS thing on K&G. One tweet that was badly thought almost ended K&G's career, the livelihood of him, his mother, whoever was there. And it's something like he didn't think about it, but he didn't finesse it in emotion. Then K&G, and worse, like way worse, blew it out of proportion. And with Fallen, I feel it's the same thing. Like in the heat of emotion, posted something probably isn't like what he was thinking, what he wanted to say. And then, like you said, once it's out, it's out. Not only, and then with bad wording, the interpretations just get out of like proportions gigantically, right? So I think he was wrong to do it, but again, it's like this Twitter phase that we live in, where one word defines your character, like that's so bullshit to me.
What do you think, Moses?
Listen, I mean, Fallen should have never tweeted that. I bet he knew that the moment he hit send. Tarek should have never tweeted that. I bet he knew that the moment he hit send as well. I think.
Yeah, by the way, Tarek, listen, homie, you sort of skated on this one, but if you're trying to get rid of that peanut brain fucking meme, this isn't helping, homie. Like, because the sad thing is, Tarek, I know you weren't even meaning that like in that way, but you essentially did also say cheat. Like, come on.
Yeah. Now, I mean, that being said, like, I don't know, cheating accusations are as old as Counter-Strike. It's always going to go down. We're just at a point, unfortunately, in the community where this is big enough and where there's enough money to where that just cannot be done publicly anymore. It just has to be taken off of Twitter. And I have no issue with them saying those things in private. I have no issues with them opening up an inquiry with BTS, with Valve, with whoever's running the tournament to say, we want you to look extra, I guess, take the next step into looking into this specific player during this match. But obviously the tweets just can't occur. And I don't even think that especially Fallen meant anything bad. And again, we can even go further, much like Gaules and Fallen. I don't believe they meant to stick, a Brazilian community on this guy, but this is the reason why it can't happen. And I have the same thing. There are tweets once in a while where I hit send and I go, oh, fuck, I should not have fucking tweeted that. In fact, I think one occurred the next morning. But, it's just the way it is. You don't know how it's going to be taken, but you can't be calling someone a blatant name locker. And the real fucking icing on the cake in this situation was when someone dragged up Fallen's tweet from like 4 years prior of him saying, you can't, like, what kind of a pussy calls someone a cheater on like a public, whatever it is. And it's just like, for fuck's sake, why can't we have nice things?
I appreciate that though, Moses. You just saw like, oh, there's a massive fire here. Let me just get out the gasoline and start throwing it around a bit. Like, thanks for helping, Jason.
Well, it goes to what Zeus said. It's like I have a rule as well for myself that I obviously failed on, which is I don't tweet within like an hour of waking up in the morning.
Right.
That's a tweet I made within like 20 minutes of waking up in the morning.
I think as well, like it's different situations as well. Gaules and Fallen I put on completely different levels and like schemes because one is an influencer whose job is there to be saying things, the other is a player who should be there to play. And one was done in the heat of the moment, one was done in the heat of the moment and continued, let's say, right?
Yes.
So it's really different, but I try just to defend on the context because like I'm not saying what they did wasn't wrong at all. I will never defend it because I'm just going to put it as what it is. I even messaged Richard Lewis at the time. I thought the clips were suspicious. Like
Yes.
Tarek obviously thought there were other players in WhatsApp. Like I think Major from like Space. Like there's other people, and we know people behind the scenes are talking, but none of it is definitive, so it shouldn't be done in public forum. But it doesn't mean the suspicion was there. So just segueing, sorry to steal the way, but into the Gaules thing, right? Like once everyone's thinking it, but no one's saying it. Like Gaules is going to comment on that shit. And he shouldn't have done it the way he did. But again, it comes back to what Jason was saying. Like all the Brazilians were asking. A lot of people, not only Brazilians, are saying something's wrong. Yes. How the fuck does someone just not say we're looking into it? Just that. Like I guarantee you, the outrage here in Brazil over all of this shit, like a gigantic part of it was because okay, we're saying something's fucked up and. Like we know internally, us as players and everything, that they did look into it, that they thought insufficient or no, okay. We know that, but nothing was put out. And yes. The moment people feel like they're getting ignored, that's going to lead. Like it's. I know I'm getting a lot of things, but it's just everything mixes together in the moment that yes. That we're living here, right? So, like. I think that it does come back again to be on the summit, and I don't know if it's Valve behind it that ties their hand, that doesn't allow them to do it, the same way orgs tie players when they want to comment. I know Valve can tie the organizer, but it doesn't make it the right way to go about things. Like, because if something had been addressed, maybe, it still would have been bad, the things that were said, but it wouldn't have gone to the size which they did.
Yes. That's actually something I want to comment on in general, is like that's one area that I feel like everyone kept getting lost. A lot of the Brazilian fans didn't understand this point. It's not about if he actually cheated. That's the point that we're making here. Because actually, listen, I agree with Zeus. They were suspicious. Now, listen, they weren't the craziest clips ever. I've seen some clips of actual people who've won majors that were crazier than that. But in this context, I agree. They looked like, in the moment especially, the first time you saw them, a couple of them looked dodgy. But the point we're making here is, if you're a pro player, listen, if you're a fan, you can say he cheated all day long if you believe that. But if you're a pro player and a player who played in the match against him, you're just not allowed to, I'm afraid. Unless that guy gets actually caught by Valve cheating, you can't do it. And that's also the problem Gaules has. Listen, if Gaules was just a streamer, and that was like he was just streaming CS himself, and then afterwards he commented, I agree, Zeus. If someone asks him in his chat, like if someone asks me, and I'm not a streamer, but if I was streaming and someone said, do you think Flusher cheated back in the day? I told you I have the best answer ever. I say, like, I don't know he did. I just think he did. So it's like a clever way to get around it and say sort of like, I think it's suspicious clips, right? But the problem Gaules had was he didn't stop and think, I'm co-streaming these events. Like, that makes me a semi-official fucking broadcast partner. So now it's like the commentator on TV being like, he's a fucking cheater, that guy, dude. Like, imagine someone doing that like an NFL game. Like, that would be crazy.
Yeah. I watched the latest by the number that you put out. I just watched the video, and you guys touched on it, and it even changed my point of view a bit, because I think I messaged you. It's like the thing is probably like, again, we're trying to, like, Richard and everyone. This is my point of view. I love Richard, but I think we're trying to put people in a sack. Like everything they do is all connected. When sometimes it isn't, because like with Gaules, 100%, a stream partner should never do that, because just be a professional about it, right? But the context, how did Gaules get there? He was just a streamer who was commentating scoreboards, saying something like that. Sometimes, like, he should definitely know. That's why we're criticizing. But sometimes he didn't know or didn't remember. Was it a stream where he was a part, or was he just commentating? I don't even know that.
I don't know.
Just goes to show how much, like, my opinion isn't everything on this case. But he's used to just talking with the fans. Like, he's not a narrator, a commentator, an analyst, anything like that. He's sitting there eating a burger or whatever and chatting. Who watches the games. Yeah, exactly. So, like, his job is to talk about things that happen, right? And again, I wouldn't never do that the way, but he's entitled to an opinion. Again, if you affirm something, it's wrong. I will never go with that. Even if it's your opinion, you should be saying, even at least wording it so that the people that interpret it have a fair way of looking at it, right? But at the same time, like, I don't think that he was as incisive as everyone's saying, like, oh, he's a cheater all the time. Like, throwing the community at that. That's like it does segue into one of the things that was pissing me off a little bit because it does get generalized in a general form. Like that's what he's doing. And you look, he did do so much good as well, right? Not trying to defend because I have nothing to do with him, but it's just how I see it.
Okay. I have another part I wanted to actually get off as well, which is the other issue is this, right? Obviously, the fact that Leaf is 16, which by the way is coincidental to this, like it's not like everyone did it because he's 16. It's just that unfortunately that makes it seem worse. Like if that's the headline, Moses, if it just says like player accused of cheating, that's one thing. If it says like 16-year-old hounded by massive fan, that just sounds like, oh my god, that's so sensational. But it's true. So here's the problem, right? Is in my opinion, and I'm just going to say it straight up, Fallen did that because it's a 16-year-old who's an unknown player, basically. He's barely played any Pro CS, and then he made those clips. I'm just saying this is my problem with him calling him out, is I told you, I've seen clips that I think are crazy. Moses is going to test this. I've sent him to him before. I've seen clips of players that I know can play online without cheats, doing really crazy shit through like walls and all sorts. But here's the thing. No one ever calls them out. And I don't believe Fallen would call them out. Even if he did the same clip, I don't believe if that's shocks that he calls them out. I'm giving an example here, obviously.
100%. And that's why I said, like, think that, I guarantee, like, even without talking to Fallen, I think that's heat of the moment thing because, again, the context, like, look at how big Gaules' stream is. There's 300,000 people watching just the Brazilian stream. So, like, we talked about this before, Duncan, like, if you guys get shit, imagine the amount of shit I got in MIBR. Imagine the amount of shit Fallen. Like, the pressure there is insane. People do not understand how big it is. So I'm not saying it's correct, but let's put ourselves in other people's shoes as well. They're about to be eliminated from the Brazil major as MIBR for them, like things like that on a match that's online, and then instantly you see 3 clips. I'm not saying he reacted correctly because I wouldn't and he shouldn't, but I see where it comes from again, and like I just think it's the thought that. Yeah, like he should learn from it, and that's I think again, org's holding back because I shouldn't even be saying this. Our guys might hate me, but if Fallen wanted to say something and he can't, right? Like he's the one that's gonna look like an asshole out of this, and his hands are tied. So he's like, to me, the rules, everything like that. Like I'm kind of a direct point kind of guy where I know people from behind the scenes. I know how they are, and like I hate seeing things being construed in bad light in that sense. Like this can go to Fallen and to Gaules, which to me, both of them right now, right, like have nothing to do with me. I even left, like I didn't leave MIBR, I got booted from MIBR. So like I should be the guy that's going against them, but I know it's not fair, right? And the same way I'm gonna segue into Brazil, because I love discussing this with you, Duncan, because Brazilians, again, might hate me for this, because I know that behind the scenes and every time we talk, you've always been very reasonable and you do see the other points of things that we do. And like, I feel that like, again, things got, then it starts with Beyond the Summit, not putting out, then things get bad, and then Gaules makes things worse, and Fallen makes things worse, and then kind of instead of just backpedaling or anything like that, like Gaules even, he probably still believes that he cheated, that's why he did it till right now. And then everyone's like, oh, Brazilians are doing this, Brazilians are doing that, but no, it's like Gaules is doing that, Fallen did that shit, right? And it just becomes, then it goes another step, and then like, one Brazilian takes offense, or like Gaules, like he did, the community, the Brazilian community is outraged. Yeah, he did that, and he's bringing light to it, but it also made it bigger, brought more light into something that probably wasn't there, and it's individuals, again, not a community. It's not like Americans are coming like, fuck Brazilians. It might be one American, like I went to the thing in the US where we're walking to the stage, the guy's like, oh, you fucking monkey. That was one guy. I don't think that's Americans. And in Brazilians, I feel that because things are so big right now, that we're all being construed like this, and like I bring that major thing back where he's like, one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my career, like or heard of, because I didn't see it personally, was that Major in Brazil had been spat on, like walking to the arena. And I know the story of someone pulling like that. That's horrendous. That's ridiculous, and it makes me ashamed of my country mates, not my country, when they do shit like that. But like he posted, one guy did that. Not that it makes up, but like hundreds after went and apologized to them, saying that like Brazil loved them and shit like that. So I hate seeing my country, especially now that I'm closer, getting this rep as a general, because I know that it's not like when we're saying that we're not calling it out, but that's the feeling we're getting right now. Like understanding the Brazilian culture is kind of really complex in the sense like before this, you probably heard this, like we wouldn't get paid in our early days because we were Brazilians as players. We weren't valued enough. Our image wasn't big enough, so they couldn't pay us the same as other teams because Brazilians couldn't spend as much. And now, so we had to be quiet like that. I know friends that lost like commentating jobs, things like that because of that thing. And then now things kind of turned around and we're big, and I'm not saying it's the correct, but the thought that's going on here is like, now that we're big, before we can do it because we're small, we're not valuable. Now that we're big, we have to shut up because we're influencing other people to do something. Like, I know it's not as clear as that. I'm just trying to give a context to the situation that's coming over here. Even I'm diving into this now that I'm back in Brazil, and I'm starting to try to get closer, and I'm trying to be someone that helps people just shed light on things and put it in the right direction. It's not easy, but I also don't want like it to be only this way. I want everyone else to also understand that as a general, we're 99% good, but 1% of 300,000 is 3,000 people that are talking shit, and those 3,000 people are loud. And if anyone knows it, like just circling back, it's us, right? So we do get where everyone's coming from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Moses.
I don't know. I have a hard one with this because I don't. Like I said, I don't blame Fallen. I don't even necessarily blame Tarek, although they obviously did stupid tweets. I don't really blame Gaules initially, even though he was a huge asshole. My big issue with them in this whole situation, or with Gaules specifically in this whole situation, was the reason I put those tweets out the next morning that actually just made this worse, as Duncan mentioned, pouring gas on the fire, is because I woke up to see the stream clips of Gaules with like, 2 or 3 other Brazilian former pro players, and in-depth analyzing each one of these clips on a stream to like 150,000 people, where I don't even speak Portuguese, but you can watch them. I mean, you know what they're saying when these clips are going on, and you see them pause at a certain moment, and then you see him look at the camera, and then he plays the rest of the clip, and then he pauses and look. You know what he's doing. You know he's basically got this weird medieval tribunal going on this poor kid who's never played in a professional match in his life. And that's what I took an issue with, is that there is some like impromptu like trial by jury that nobody knows about.
The Brazilian Inquisition.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But more than anything, the next part is I got yelled at for those tweets for generalizing, which I agree is a problem that we should stray away from. It's hard not to generalize when you're talking on Twitter because of the character limit. So we kind of all accepting do it, but then also look at it from the 16-year-old's point of view. Look at it from Leaf's point of view. If he's getting 1,000 tweets from 1,000 Brazilian fans, and only 5 of them are death threats, or only 2 of them are like threats of violence, but then the other 998 are all calling him a fucking piece of shit cheater. Those 2 death threats are going to feel like way more. Like it doesn't matter that it's only 1%. Nobody in the world, no one in the world is equipped to deal with that kind of aggressiveness on social media. Much less, like, at least for us, at least for me, at least for you, Will, at least for Duncan, our Twitter grew. Like, we started at 10,000 people on Twitter, and then we had 50,000, then we had 80,000.
It's like a learning curve, right?
Yeah, and every step of the way, you start to realize and get accustomed to the level of scrutiny that what you put out into the world is. And for someone who just had, like, his biggest game of professional Counter-Strike ever, he had a good performance, he was probably high in his life. For him to have 2,000 Twitter followers and come back to that, like there's no way that he can deal with that. And that was my issue for Gaules, was the fact that he kept it up. He had the tribunal, and then the next day he tweeted the screenshot of a bad performance. And then you had all the other Brazilian commentators, and this is the real issue. And this isn't centered on Gaules, it's centered on, I guess, the culture we have in esports. But once a topic gets to this level of conversation in a community, every facet of that community like feasts on it. It's like a fucking carcass in the wild. Everyone's going to come and get their chunk of flesh. You have the YouTubers creating their own content about, is Leaf cheating? You have all like the B-list streamers and commentators. I've never seen so many Brazilian casters cover an ESEA main or advanced match than when Leaf played his next like 2 matches. I was watching people tweet clips at me of pedestrian clips on train of him and a teammate having seen this guy turn around the corner and Leaf shooting through the wall when his teammate was already fighting him. I've never seen so many people scrutinize everything he did. And the real issue with what Gaules made happen in the Brazilian scene was I didn't see for the thousands of messages I received across a week from Brazilian fans of varying levels, I didn't see a single one say that there was a possibility he wasn't cheating. I saw one guy respond to Leaf saying, "I'm sorry, it doesn't matter whether you're cheating or not. your career's over. Like, we're going to take your career from you. I saw people, tweeting at me, who gives a fuck about a piece of shit cheater? There was never a doubt in their minds that he was cheating because they got the okay, and then it hit Twitter trending, and then all the YouTubers started making content, and then all the streamers started following his matches, and then everyone was laughing and starting to post, clips of when he had a bad game. So he has a bad game, and it's proof he's cheating because he toggled off. He has a good game, and it's proof he's cheating because he had a good game. And that's what's fucked up about the situation, is that there's no way for
it's all fucked up. And again, it's unfortunate, but it's kind of like I don't want this to sound hard. It happened, right? There's not much we can do, but at the same time, like I said, how can you silence a whole community because they're large? So because they're large, they can't say anything. Like, I'm not saying I defend Gaules, because like I said, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'm against the way it was done, and I don't justify anything that's done, but it's individuals, right? So that's what, on the generalization part, I think we're the same. To me, again, it comes back to Beyond the Summit, because all these continuations and, people are looking into every other match. Well, guess what? If there was a position, they wouldn't be doing that. It's that sense of injustice that was lodged down Brazilians' throats, right? Again, I know that what Gaules and Fallen did was wrong. That's never what I'm going to be advocating here. What I'm advocating, I guess, is I think everyone together is, it doesn't matter if you're Brazilian or American or whatever it is, everyone is against, like, generalization, be it because you're black or white or because you're Brazilian or everything like that. And we can't let it get to that, because I'm Zeus. I'm not here to defend Gaules or Fallen or any of them. They can go do that themselves. They put out their apologies. They know their reasoning at the end of the day. What I don't want to see is the misconstruction of our community because of individuals. If it's Gaules at fault, if it's Fallen at fault, if it's whoever at fault, let it be them.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Keep going.
Let it be them, or let them have the chance to fight for themselves. And I get what you're saying, but as well, I think you're overestimating there, Jason, because I'm going to give an example. I looked at the community went outraged, but look what they're doing to Device Twitter after, like, he posted pussy move to call that shit out. And then I'm like, the same way that I messaged Richard Lewis saying these clips are suspicious, I went, looked at it, and then I'm like, hey, Richard, they're suspicious, but like they're not as bad as I thought. I was able to understand some of these situations. There's maybe one or two that stand out. Let it be. There's nothing we can do, right? I looked at Device's Twitter, and like so many casters, so many personalities were talking like, look what's happening to this, and you look at it, there's like 98% were super respectful. There's one or two that are idiots. And then even those idiots, I saw Brazilian guys behind them, like, get out of here, you toxic fuck shit. Like, that's the Brazilian person. So, like, I don't know what was personal to you, and I'll never know, right? What you got to you. Like, maybe you got the shit end of the stick where you literally got the worst part.
If you're American, you get pretty bad ones. 'Cause the joke that I said on By the Numbers is they always think me and Richard are American as well, which, by the way, in a fucked up way, Moses, works, because like you can diss America all you want to me. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not from there, so it doesn't hurt my feelings.
And again, like, you're saying it, but like, kind of but just because Brazilians are bigger, like in a sense, like not what's Gaules, but we can't say like the world lives off of polemic topics. Where like look at what this show is. We're on. It's to talk about shit that's going down. Like Richard and Duncan, they made a lot of their careers of Richard a lot more journalistic. Thorin is a journalist as well, but he likes the edginess to it, like all the time. And like it's their opinions, it's their way to view it, and it's fair. Like. Let's look at that FNS thing. Like it's a continuation, but it wasn't looked at as badly, even though it was ending. Like and to be fair, like if I have to say it to Duncan and ever, I feel bad that you get a lot of shit, but you do entice the Brazilian community a lot. You're like, oh, Carajo, this, fuck that. Look at what's going on. So like you do, so you're kind of drawing out the shitty elements to that, right? It doesn't mean that everyone is like that.
I think there's a couple different layers to that. I think the first is obviously when you have a scene, you kind of ran through them earlier, where one event, so a player's beard was tugged on as he walks through to the stage. Another event, someone is spit on. So I think in that sense, unfortunately, like the Brazilian scene, and I've always been a pretty big proponent of how good of a time I've had at the Brazilian events that I've gone to. I've been to 3 now, but you do have like there's a little bit less leeway for the Brazilian community to work with, and that's just kind of how it that's just kind of how it is when that shit occurs at the events. And I don't like it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is just kind of the way it is, unfortunately, until there's a shift of focus. I think the other thing to unpack, and this is what really set me off, is, if we just want to put some context to when all of this was going down, was also the week where all, the Me Too accusations and all that stuff was coming out in the community. And as we all know, I was watching a very close friend and colleague of mine, whether right or wrong, get dragged through the mud of social media. And I saw the effect it has on him. Like, I'll just be frank, like,
traumatic.
Yeah, dude, I've never seen Henry so low and so just beaten. And that's something that really scares me when I think about some 16-year-old kid who's never had this many eyes or this level of importance on him. Like, that's not something that we can let slide. And
we shouldn't. And just sorry to cut you off, but it's just like, that's what I'm saying. Like, all these individuals that are like, we can't fix what was done to him. We can fix moving forward, right? Like, being direct. And everyone's fucking up a little. Chaos themselves. They just got into a shit show with MIBR. What they post when Furia wins, hashtag Gia de Furia. You're 16-year-olds getting harassed and you post that shit. You're trying to bring more people to hate on you. It's like everyone's messed up in this entire situation in a general sense. No one's like literally trying to.
I don't even know about that tweet from Chaos.
Yeah, no, that like, so that's the own organization who's supposed to be protecting our player. In my head, they're fucked up in their heads. Like, what the hell are they doing? They're bringing more light. Like, yes, they are bringing the bad elements onto them, right? It's crazy how even me putting out, I'm sure I phrased something wrong there, but it's like we're all trying to like fix, and it seems like we're messing it up. And it might be, in my view, this is my very idiotic like person view from here, but it's like I just feel it's this generalization. We can't put anybody in a bunch. It's just the fucking individuals who are messed up. We have to call them out, and they have to stop in the general sense. As for the Brazilian culture, I get 100% what you're saying. Like, I've been here, I've been to the events. What I'm saying is there's the positive side to it. So, like, yeah, if we need to make the culture there, like, to have people go on stage to talk like we did before, it's horrible. It shouldn't be like that, right? So when they talk about taking an event away from Brazil, I get it. But when they're talking about the Brazilian community's voice as a whole, then I don't get. Like, when it comes to player safety, everything like that, I have to understand this, that like I've lived through the other end. Like, I've talked to Hiko, and the experience, even though I knew nothing was going to happen to Hiko, the fact that he felt threatened is enough of a reason to show how crazy things are just with social media. But to me, again, generalizing, it's not something that's exclusive to Brazilians. How many Russians death threats do we get that I can't read, or betters and China betters and shit like that? Like, from everyone. I don't say this to play the pity card because I'm white, but I've been called a monkey in so many countries, in so many arenas. It's insane. It's nothing exclusive. No, yes, I get what you're saying. Like, it's a different scale when someone spits on you or something like that. But at the same time, it isn't. Like, it is, but it's the core concept is the same. It's the prejudice, the hate for something that's out of your control, kind of a thing.
What I'll say is this, like, I actually think the Russian angle is a good one to take, because listen, as someone who is obviously critical and makes banter, after Brazilians, Russia's definitely number two. Like, I've had a bazillion messages in Russian. I mean, I have the same joke about that. I just don't plus translate tweet, I think, right? I'm sure this doesn't say, like, have a nice bunch of flowers and kiss on the cheek in Russian, so I just won't press translate tweet. Like, I can probably guess. I even now know what the word Sukubliat looks like in fucking Russian, like Cyrillic language, so I don't need to click that. But the point is, the reason why I think that's a good angle to bring up is, right, every fan base isn't the same, certainly. And certainly some of them, like, for example, I don't even know what you'd have to do to Swedish people to get some of these tweets. I don't even know if it's even possible you could get them to tweet like kill yourself or something. They're just a different type of people. But the reason why I think the Russian angle is a good one is because there's another group of people. Remember, most of these tweets aren't coming in English. Or they're coming in really broken English. So these are people who know fuck all about American culture. And anyone, listen, we can all attest to this. American culture, even the last 5 years, feels like it's gone 30 years into the future in some good ways and some really bad ways, unfortunately. So as a result, even if you're American, you have to know right literally where the world is at this month, or you might fuck up when you tweet. So I can't even imagine what we think's going to happen when some 15-year-old kid with a Twitter account, which, by the way, I noticed nearly every account that said these tweets would have like one follower, and it would be following like 10 people. Like, it was almost like a million bot accounts, but they were real people, but they were just a mass of fans who they probably don't even interact with people. They only send like tweets to their people they like. So what happens there is you have some kid who's never going to go to a LAN, No one's ever going to punish him. He's never going to have any consequences to anything he says. It actually reminds me of the really early days of the internet, where everyone was mad edgy for exactly this reason. You didn't think it was real life. You thought you were off in some other world, the internet, and if you see someone, you just say shit to banter, you be rude to him, you say edgy shit. People obviously back then have made really stupid jokes that now you would get wrecked for, but it was just stupid jokes back then. I think, unfortunately, there's that factor as well. It's like, the further you are away from like what we think is reality, which unfortunately is just American culture, because it's kind of ubiquitous in the world to us. Germans know it, British people know it. The problem is, like, as people are seeing with all these top Russian players keep getting banned off Twitch, these guys don't know what American culture is like now. They're saying stuff like, no, but that word is fine. To say, no, you might think it's fine, and Russians might think it's fine, but Twitch is not a Russian company, dude. They're not going to punish you based on that. And in fact, they have to punish you, sadly, in the modern world. I'm not talking about that issue, but in general, they have to punish you at a standard that most of us don't live at in other countries. So unfortunately, it might sound fucked up, but we all have to basically, if we want to be on these American platforms, you have to follow the American rules, I'm afraid. That's just a reality. So unfortunately, at the moment, Brazilian fans, Russian, they don't get that. That message hasn't gotten to them. They still think they're Brazilian fans in Brazil. I mean, the guy is in Brazil, I'm assuming, doing the tweet, and he thinks, well, I'm not going to an American event. Whether I give a fuck. And if you're young enough, you're not even thinking about the consequences. You're just thinking, fuck this guy, I'm going to send him a horrible message. That's it. That's the end. For you, you log off, you go to have your dinner, that's it.
That's not exactly it, but that's part of it. That's kind of what I was trying to say. I think you worded it a lot better, the Gaules thing. Because even if, like, let's say if Gaules didn't know he was official partner for that one, like, I don't know if he was or not, but, like, to his fans, he's on Twitch, but it's a full BR stream. But it's a full BR stream, right? Like, so it's just context. I'm, again, not saying it's wrong. What I was saying before is just, and I don't even want to stay on this much longer, because I think I've gotten through the main point.
Yeah,
it's just,
sure.
I think that, at least for me, I'm trying, like, a lot of people asked, like we were saying, so, Zeus, you guys are influencers. Someone has to say something, and no one was saying anything, so I'm trying. So, like, I know it's not correct, but I don't want to see it, because, like, I'm not advocating for Gaules. I'm trying to advocate for the principle in the sense of, like, we're all influencers, right? So if Duncan says something, he's not spreading hate. I know it's a different thing, but it's like, because he says G, like, was at a club or something, doesn't mean that he's saying to something to cancel G or something like that. But that's how, like, if the FNS thing, that's kind of how it was took, right? Like, he posted something and how it goes. And there's, like, other examples, like at the finals of the second major that we won, I think, like, the commentary for the final round is, like, locked out later than G, something like that. And, like, it's huge platform. So It in my view, it's really hard for everyone to censor themselves of opinions and ways and things to say things. We have to, of course, try to make ourselves better and everything like that. But I think that in a general sense, yeah, we have to be smarter, but we also have to be more conscious of where everyone else is coming from, and a little bit more, I don't know, just not, I'm going to say sympathetic, and I don't mean to Gaules or to Fallen, because, like, in this case, it would be to Leaf. But if I, as a player, think of what the other person is going to happen, Leaf would have never had the harassment, right? From followers or anything like that. But at the same time, like, if everyone doesn't try to keep throwing gasoline in the fire and making things better for clicks and everything like that, and try to actually explain the situation, we're not going to get out of this. And I'm concerned as a general, because Brazil is a gigantic asset in terms of audience and everything like that. If they pull out, it's going to be bad for everyone. It's going to affect me directly. So of course I'm here talking about it, and I don't want, like, the emotional side of it as well. But to the Brazilians that watch this and understand English, help me educate everyone else as well, for the love of God, because the cultural thing is real. It's like, it's crazy that things here, like we were talking before the show on this, but some things here which outside of Brazil are, like, crazy, over here is normal for you to joke about with your friends, and not everyone takes it like that. So always try to think of in the way that person that might listen to it would feel, and how they might react to things. I don't know.
Right, and we will move on in a minute, but one thing I wanted to ask you about, or one thing I wanted to say rather, is I think something you said earlier was quite a good point, where you said that, like, it's not like I don't tweet stuff, like, basically fucking with the Brazilian fans, right? That's one of the problems with this whole cycle as well, is that if the Brazilian fans say harsh stuff to me, like, it's just my personality. If people fuck with me, I'm going to fuck with them back. Yeah, of course, that's my shit. I'm not just going to go, okay. I mean, I actually haven't done it recently, because, I mean, I'm not going to promise I won't, like, fuck that. But listen, I've got, like, slightly different approach, so we'll see if I can stick to that or not. But basically, I agree. If they trigger me, I'm going to trigger them back, which is going to trigger them more. Then they're going to trigger me more, and then I'm going to trigger more. And it's just going to keep going, right? Constantly. So in that scenario, like, I will say this. I want to now transition to the topic actually about the hate Brazilians get, because I think what I just said is very relevant. Like, here's the problem. I'm not making a direct equivalence between whoever the fans on HLTV are, because let's face it, half of them have fake flags. You can't really know what country they're from. Whoever they are, I'm not saying it's the same as the Brazilian ones, right? Because I actually do genuinely think, I've seen this behaviour a long time whenever sports culture in Brazil comes up. This is usually the way they react. So I actually think some of those HLTV people, first of all, they're like the Russian and the Brazilian fans I was talking about. They're an edgy kid on an anonymous account that will never be punished, who can say anything. Yeah. So guess what? They're going to say, they're going to say the meanest joke, of course, because the worst that happens is the HLTV account gets banned, nothing else. Now, when they do that, when they see Brazilian fans go crazy, they're going to throw all the gasoline on the fire. And then it's going to be a ridiculous backwards and forwards. And the problem is, just as we're saying, some of the Brazilian fans say, I'm going to cut your head off and rape you and all that, the stupid idiot on HLTV forums, as you said, goes straight to racism. And listen, obviously, we don't have to go on and on about it. I literally apologised. I made a tweet that was like that once. I've done that myself. Difference is, these people are doing it all the time, every time the topic comes up. And that's one of the problems where, listen, we can have a separate discussion about should there be on moderated forums. Like, listen, it is moderated, but is it moderated well enough? That's all just a topic there. But what my point is, like, that's a cycle as well. They say stupid racist shit, then the Brazilians go crazier, then they go, this is why I was in the rest, and it just goes a cycle that never ends. And I think that's bad for everyone, because then we've got Brazilians going nuts on everyone, we've got HLTV being arseholes to everyone. And by the way, listen, no matter what Brazilians say, even if they say kill yourself, going to rape you, that doesn't make you saying racist shit about them fine. That is actually totally wrong.
It's also like one of the first lessons you learn in life is the whole eye for an eye. Like, why are we doing that? why is that the justification?
All right, two rights, I'm not wrong. And sorry to HLTV, but they're from blows. That thing is toxic. I don't care what country you're from. Like 90, there is a generalization, I guess. But so many people on that forum just are there to post shit because they know there's no like solid moderation in any sense in that forum.
And we've seen, I mean, I got into that today. Duncan's gotten into it many times. Sponge's got into it many times. I think all of us have probably spoken to HLTV at events behind the scenes as well. Like that was one problem where during this whole thing, I had a lot of Brazilians tweeting at me saying, why don't you ever speak up when there's like racism in Twitch chat and HLTV? And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do when I'm casting a game and I see racism in Twitch chat? Like, bring it up inside the, like, I don't know. There's only a few people who can fix the racism on HLTV, and there's only a few people who have the power to fix the racism on Twitch as well. And I don't know. I don't have the answers for that kind of stuff.
No one does. Like, I'm gonna call someone out here wrong. Like, it's wrong to do it in a sense, but like, I think that on the scale of things, like one of the examples that they use here that stuck in my mind was like, everyone knows that lunchtime review kid, Sean, right? He's posting towards everyone, and the coach from Chaos is like called him, "Oh, you stupid piece of shit," or something like that in a direct message, probably in a heated moment where I'm sure he doesn't mean it and everything like that. But like, I know this, like, had Gaules or someone like that said something like that, oh, it's over, right? And I think that's kind of like the disparity that, at least from the people, I'm not saying this from the fans, but like from the people behind the scenes, like my friends here that play in the community, that's what they mention when they're doing that. So I don't know if someone that mentioned that to you were just fans or something like that, right? But I'm saying from the people from behind the scenes here, there is a feeling of that, like I said before, from casters and everyone, from being told we were less when we were players or casters. And then when now that, because it's natural, because it's a big community, it's going to draw more light. It's just how things are. I get it, right? It's normal. And one, it's not you or mine or Thorin's job or anyone to be saving and advocating these things. We do it because when we care and when we catch something, if we do, like you're watching a match, you're not there to read Twitch chat, right, or something, or even HLTV forums. But I even lost my train of thought. That was kind of...
It's all right. What about this? One of the problems I have with this topic is, actually, this is one area where I'm actually a little bit different from Richard. It depends. I haven't personally looked at all the Gaules clips, so I can't really know what he was saying. So I can't say whether he was like actively egging people on. I've heard some people say he is, I'm sure somebody who isn't. So I won't comment on that. But I will say, I actually personally am not a believer in that idea that, like, if you say something, it was all of your followers. It's like, I always say this, Twitter doesn't work that way. Like, you know, half my followers are probably half Fallen's followers. Well, how do we decide who they're following? What if I say something, are they following me? If Fallen says it, are they following him? Like, they're not literally my pets or slaves, you know. They're just people following me on Twitter. Like, they are sentient humans who choose what they do. So I will say, listen, if I posted something, everyone might know there's a very famous case, it's actually from England, where there was a king and basically he had a falling out with his friend who was a priest and called Thomas More, and he said, who will rid me of this troublesome priest? And then a knight of his went out and killed the priest, and then he was like, but I didn't say to kill him. And it's like, you did and you didn't though, didn't you, dude? Like, you sort of did sort of imply it, and then someone just read into that, and maybe it wasn't what you meant, but they did do what you said. So I agree there's a fine line. You can seem like you're sort of going up to the line of saying, just get this guy now, and then get away with it later and go, but I didn't say it. But the problem is, like, that's why I say, this is the problem I have. One thing I agree with is, and this is what Zeus did, is all I want is when a really big situation like that happens, like it's really bad luck for everyone. And as you guys are saying, you want the Brazilian scene to be represented differently. I don't think that it's your job to stop them. I don't think you have to. I don't think anyone can. It's definitely not your fault. But all I want is what you did. Just do a tweet that's like, this is unacceptable. Same as if you notice, I did a tweet that was like, even in spite of all the other stuff, racism against Brazilians, like that is unacceptable as well. Like, we have to get rid of that on HLTV. As long as I think in my opinion, once we've done that tweet, we're not even obligated to, but we've done our job. We've been responsible then. We've done what we can. That's about all, as just random talking heads in a box, that's about all we can do.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to get shit for this, for some of the things I said. You're going to get it. It's not natural, but I think all of us can put our heads to rest at night on the pillow knowing that we're trying at least, right?
I'll even say, and listen, I have no reason to like HLTV. They've been, some of the people who work on that site have been fucking arseholes to me the whole time. But I even told them ages ago the actual solution to this problem. Because without getting into it too deep, I personally think with the way their website works, they have a lot of people who basically do only want to go there to be edgy. They want to go there and be silly on the forums and make stupid posts and do bait posts like put forest leaves and then put that fucking skin that's called forest leaves. So you think forest left nipples. They want to do all the stupid shit like to get attention. And the problem I have is, I've no doubt that makes the activity on the site really good and it helps their impressions and it helps the business side, right? So I personally, because I'm very much like a free speech person, I think you should kind of somewhat let people do what they want. I don't think you should obviously let them say racist stuff. That goes across the line. But you should let them be stupid and say silly jokes if they want. So I even said in the past, it's up to them how they moderate the forum itself. They have to decide what's right and wrong. But I at least wish they could do a compromise. And my compromise is this. Even if the forum post's created, it definitely can't have an uninhibited route to the front page of your website as the title. Because if it was like a queue that appeared to the admin and he had to approve the ones that go on the front page, it'd still be on the forum. Hopefully you'd catch it if it was racism, but you know, then you have the 10 minutes it takes to catch it. But the problem I have is that goes to the front page, because now you're letting any kid in the world who can make a fake account say anything on the front page. And that is a really dangerous incentive on the internet, because you're going to get people where they might not even have made that stupid jump, and now they're going to go super edgy. And so that's what I would say to HLTV. If you're not going to totally moderate it, most people would say just get rid of it. Like I've seen a lot of people saying that. I don't go that far. I certainly think moderate it, but I would say this. Please be responsible with the front page, though. At least make there be a filter somehow there. Like, make it catch racist words to the front page, at least. Make it at least have an approval system so that, like, I'm sure you've got admins around who can do the basics of this, you know? And let's do it stage by stage at a minimum, please. Because it's also, like I said on Twitter, it's a really bad look that in the modern day, I'm going to say it straight up, I don't like them as a site. That's for personal reasons. That site is basically the ESPN for what ESPN does of sports, of Counter-Strike. Yep. If you want to know when the game is, if you want to know what the latest interview is, of course you go there. If you want to see who the MVP is, you go there. So my problem is this. Imagine a massive guy from Intel or some company that wants to get into esports, maybe like an NFL team wants to buy in. Listen, I doubt this is really happening, but just give me a hypothetical here. Imagine they hear Counter-Strike's huge, it's getting 1 million viewers, it's got all this money, it's got tournaments. Wow, this looks professional. What's the big site I should be checking out? Check out HLTV.org. Imagine that guy clicks that and he sees a thread that is a literal racial slur first thing on the thread. He's just going to literally think, right, I'm going to press the X in the corner of the site. I'm about Counter-Strike.
Yep.
I'm going to another game. I'm going to Fortnite. I'm going to PUBG. They're going to go to another game, or a game that doesn't have HLTV.org. I'm sorry, that is real.
Or just new fans, like anyone who watches a major and that is like, hey guys, I really enjoyed watching, the semifinals and the final of this major. I want to get into more Counter-Strike. HLTV is always the website that's linked, whether it's on Reddit, whether it's on Twitter, whatever it might be. It's like, hey, go to HLTV. You'll see all the upcoming games, all the upcoming events. Like that can't be the representation that our game has, that we're passing out. So mental.
I think you're both right on that.
Right, for this particular CS Money sponsored giveaway, graphics everywhere, I wish I actually had editing skills. I didn't have to just say shit like that. It'd be nice to live in one of those worlds. One of these days I'll learn.
Surely you can hit up CS Money, have them create like a nice little transitional effect.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Yeah.
Right, so for this episode, listen, he was getting a bit jealous of all those people losing and winning skins. Moses wants to take a crack at the champ and see if he can win a skin. Now, here's the thing. Cosmos is my boy, and the house always wins. I'm going to actually give him a good chance here. If anyone doesn't know how this one works, what happens is there's a skin to be won. In this particular case, the skin is called a Mach 10 Stalker Factory New. I don't know how good that is. You can look it up yourself. And basically, we're going to ask Moses a question here. This particular question is multiple choice, but it's actually only 2. So you've got a 50% chance of getting it right, Moses. This is big. Now, when I ask Moses this question, if he gets it right, he wins the skin, the Mach 10 Stalker. If he gets it wrong, then you, the fans, could enter. But let's see if he gets it right or wrong first. There's no point in saying, I can do this, and then you'll fucking...
Putting a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah. So here's the question, Moses, and you have to answer pretty quickly, because listen, there's only 2 answers to this one. There's no fucking thinking about this. It's a question, and it's about which one was added first. So what skin was added to the game earlier? And it's 2 different AWP skins. So was it the AWP Onitaji or the AWP Mortis? Which one?
What the absolute fuck? I don't know what either of those skins are.
Guess.
Let's go with the AWP Mortis was first.
Right, Moses managed to get a 50-50 question wrong. So that means, by the way, that's great for all the fans. So, much like the prediction game, Moses has gone fucked it up, hasn't he? So, it's all right. That means you, the fans, can potentially win, not the AWP one, calm down, the Mach 10 Stalker skin, and you win it by, this is what you need to do. In the YouTube comments, I mean, you already know the answer. There's only one answer, so there's not even, just basically write AWP Onitaji, yeah? And then this is the key thing, put your Steam ID. Don't put a link, because sometimes YouTube takes links up. Just put whatever the ID is, the number or whatever the fuck. And then we'll pick one of you and you'll win that skin, which is the Mach 10 Stalker. So, listen, did you hear me? I'll tell you one more time. The answer is the AWP Onitaji. Just write that below. If you do that, that's it. It's over at that point. At that point, it's out of your hands. You win or you don't. Right. Now let's talk some fucking CS, not just about... people's tweets, our reactions to the tweets, then people's talk show reactions to the tweets, and then how we tweeted about the reaction to the talk show, to the tweets, to the reaction to everything about Brazil and HLTV forums. So we're actually going to talk about things that matter now. So one of the interesting things for me, Zeus, is the Americas region is mad competitive now. When it first started and I saw, because of the lockdown, right, it's just like Americas only. I remember thinking... Dude, I'd love this if I was Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses. We're just going to win like $500,000 each. Like, we're just going to be first, second in every tournament. Like, maybe someone like Furia has an outside chance. The crazy thing is, because of the online era and how many tournaments we've had and how many matches you have to play, dude, almost every one of the top teams has had their chance. MIBR has been in the final. Gen.G's won a tournament. EG's won a couple of tournaments. Team Liquid was won a tournament and then was in finals and top 4. Furia's been in a million finals and top 4. Like, every one of these top teams has had their day. Basically, everyone except 100 Thieves. And by the way, that's fucking impressive. I don't know how you guys... I know you had a rep for being bad online, but you guys are really bad online. Like, at this point in time, like, you just can't win. But anyway, that's enough roasting the Aussies, right? Here's the question, Zeus. You said before, you just came out with it. Normally, people are polite. They're like, you know what? Oz and Zeus, we were going in different directions. We were decided we were going this way. And then you were just like, no, straight up, they kicked me. Right? When you came over and you ended up in Evil Geniuses, what was Evil Geniuses the main destination? Did you have other options on the table? Were you considering things? Was there a chance you maybe went and coached the Brazilian team?
Coaching a Brazilian team would be hard just because I've reached a certain level that I'm old. I want to stay at some level of pay and just it is what it is, right? And I had just gotten off the best Brazilian roster. I wasn't gonna go down like that's a moral peg, right? Best Brazilian or best name or whatever. I know that Furia and everything is super competitive, and we even lost. You even choked there, Jesus. That one was hard to come out.
It sounded good though. It sounded like a powerful.
Yeah.
Choke.
But no, yeah, I did have.
It's because he was thinking about when he was on MIBR. He started thinking about Furia, started choking immediately, and fucked the whole thing up. So it's still MIBR to the core.
I had to go there.
Unfortunately, we can't edit that out as well because Duncan made a pretty good joke.
The joke is too good. Now I've got to keep it in. Yeah,
it's good. It's all good. So I did have other options. I did again look into staying in the Americas for this stupid idea that I was already in California. I wanted to stay in the US. So I decided to look for American teams. So there were others I was looking to, but I ended up on EG. It was something I made quite easily the decisions. I wasn't looking at that many teams. Luckily, even though I was booted out of MIBR, I did have still interest from teams out there. And I'm really happy that I ended up with EG. It's a new project, it's something new. It's good to start on fresh ground, you know?
Right. Listen, obviously, coaching is always the toughest thing to talk about if you're an analyst because, except for Blast, we don't know what you're saying. Like, we have to just guess. And normally, we have to guess almost like a detective. Like, for example, the reason I always say Cassard is so good when he was in Renegades 100 Thieves is because I saw 100 Thieves when they didn't have him. And so I have to just guess that he had the impact. Listen, it seems likely, but I can't know for sure. And then also, I'm going off things that are biased. Like, I've talked to him personally. He's a very smart guy. So, like, at the same time, it's hard to know exactly. It's not like pro players where we're seeing what they do. But the question I have is this, right? I actually think I'm a Pet has his own strengths. Like I've always said, he's definitely a guy who's very hard working, looking in demos and trying to find like unique edges and weird map veto angles you can go with. But I always did feel like in EG, they're an example of a team. I think it's the same with Team Liquid, right? They've got a load of really skilled players, but then they're the sort of players where a whole bunch of them are really quiet. They're like really like in reserved guys. They just want to play the game and do that. And so those sorts of players, typically I think a coach should bring what the players don't have. He should complete the picture. And so I always wanted, if not you, I wanted you or Cassard to basically be EG coach. I wanted someone who's a bit more fiery, who's going to come in, like he did when he came into Team Liquid and took them all those finals. Going to kind of kick people up the arse a bit and tell them like, you're one of the best teams. Like, why the fuck are you just falling over when this guy pressures you? Like, we can beat those guys. Like, was part of that like something you were thinking about when he came into the team? Because obviously they were in a big slump when you joined.
Yeah, so joining, my experience was I had 1 or 2 days where I just watched them online, and those first days everything just looks like perfectly. And it was near that Pro League finals where EG was in the finals against Furia, and I'm like, oh, I'm joining into something that's already well made and solid. And after I saw it wasn't like that, so I did need to do the hype man motivational thing that everyone knows and kind of building up. I think that's the foundation for every team, because what a team needs is going to change over time. Sometimes you're going to need a little bit of strat work. Sometimes you're going to need a bit of kick up the ass to get the fire going. Sometimes you need to actually bring the team down a peg where they're getting so high on their heels, right? And in the beginning, they definitely just needed a restructure and a reset of mentality. It's not a diss to I'm a Pet or who's there. Just the same way as I wasn't the problem in MIBR, it doesn't mean that I'm a Pet was a problem in EG. But the solution sometimes is just to shake things up, and I'm pretty good at adapting to these situations. So I was able to identify pretty early on what the main point of issues in my view were just the lack of alignment on ideas, not being on the same page, and one wants to do one idea, one wants to go to another, so we're getting 2 half-assed ideas instead of one full one. Even if I always say this, it's better to do the wrong idea together than the wrong one separate, the right one separately. And if a team doesn't have that from the beginning, they're going to be screwed up. And that's kind of where we were in the beginning. That's kind of where the EG slump was. Like you said, talent they have, everything like that. They have the play. They just needed a little bit of confidence, restructure in what the teamwork is, and then guidance in the team level. And then me and Peter just got together and discussed with everyone how we wanted to play, changed up the rules, started getting everyone feeling confident, and then made some kind of game plans in the sense not of round 1, 2, 3, 4 we do this, in the sense of which areas do we want to attack, why do we do this, and start to understand the reasoning behind it. Because I keep saying that as someone that says they understand all the nuances of tactical CS, they're full of shit. Because there's people that are going to understand more. But if chess is super complicated, imagine CS where every round is 5 moving pieces across different maps with utility. Like it's so many options of how a round can go right and wrong. It's insane. So it's all about having an idea and trying it together. And sometimes you're going to lose. It's normal. But if you're doing separate ideas, you're going to definitely lose. And I think that was the biggest starting point with the G's, just getting everyone, hey, you guys are fucking good. Let's get this shit together. And then it takes a little bit of time for you to actually start believing it. It's not overnight, like with a magic speech or anything, right?
Which team of yours was at a higher level when you hopped on with between Liquid and EG? Like when you stepped into
definitely
Liquid?
G. Definitely G, because in Liquid, when I stepped on, if you remember, we went up a lot, but when I joined, I think we were maybe number 29 in the world. It was still like, remember the roster I got when I jumped on? It was Hiko, Pimp, JDM, like it was completely different roster. One, we got like so many pieces had to be changed. So hopping on initially, EG is already kind of a built set piece that I can get to work easier, and that's why I think as well. Even I was surprised because I usually say my work usually takes around 3 to 4 months to at least get really started, right, to change that culture. But because they're so good and they have such a chemistry, it was sped up, and even I was surprised at the speed at which we got. Not that I didn't think we could do it, but I didn't think we'd fix so fast.
Here's the thing, Zeus. This is why the universe, if you wait long enough and you never give up, it is sort of fair. So I always say, I've told you it as well, you never get any credit for Liquid because you were on the Liquid that kept coming second all those times. But then Adren just literally inherited that team, got Stewie 2 and won all those tournaments. And everyone was like, wow, he's such a great coach. And I was like, listen, I'm not taking anything away from Adren. But that's like that analogy of, famously where it's really hard to get certain jars open, like a pickle jar or something. And famously, right, someone can try loads, like, ugh, and then if they hand it right, maybe they get it like almost off. And then they think, just give up. And then the other guy takes it and he pops it just like pop. And you just think, that's bullshit. Like I got that all the way off and you just did it at the end. So my analogy for Adren was like that. It's like, listen, Adren, you did a good job. You took what you had and you completed it. But my man Zeus here was taking them from like not even making the major through to like fucking all these top results, second, all this. Well, here's the good thing. You got this back now because in EG, I'm a pet was just slaving away all these months trying to get it to work. But he had a really good lineup, right? And then you just come in and you're like, do this, do that, and then they're like, championship. It's like, listen, the payback happened eventually. You got your turn to be the guy who popped the pickle jar. There's the fucking name of the episode. Zeus pops the pickle jar. You
are the most expensive pickle jar in all of Counter-Strike.
There you go.
Holy hell. Oh, I like that analogy. It's true because I'm not gonna lie. Liquid was so frustrating because I helped. Not I got them. It'd be horrible if I said that because I don't believe it. I helped them and they helped me get to. Like I said, from 29 to number 2, and it was so frustrating to never break that Astralis era, dude. Oh, you have no fucking idea. I always used to say I couldn't see any more fucking confetti on the stage. Every time I'd come back, my backpack's full of confetti, and I know it's not for me. It's like, holy shit.
I've got a cool anecdote for people, actually. I know you don't mind me telling this story, mate. Right, this is how deep Zeus was trying to go on this shit, right? I'll tell everyone a very quick anecdote, right? I once heard a story, because obviously one of my favourite basketball players was Kobe, right? And the story that showed his, like, amazing work ethic to, like, think about the game differently is when in 2009, he was going to play the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs, because they're coached by George Karl, who used to coach in the 90s the Seattle Supersonics, who played against Michael Jordan, and famously Kobe and Michael are like the most similar game ever. Kobe was going and asking people and studying how did he defend Michael Jordan like 20 years earlier to figure out how might he try and defend me. That was like the level he was trying to get to think outside the box. So people don't know this. Almost right towards the end of his time in Liquid, when they'd lost to Astralis a fucking million times in a row, and it's like, give me a break. And even, it didn't matter if it was a blowout, if it was close, it was just always losing. Zeus was literally asking me, just from a historical perspective, like, can you think of any good examples of teams that were in this position? Like, they kept coming second, it was always the same opponent who beat them, and then they broke through. Like, is there any good examples I can go and look at? Can I study and find, like, what did they change or what they do? So, actually, he really was going super ham. Here's one thing I've got to think is brutal, though, Zeus, is in your period, that was God tier Astralis. Like, that was them at their peak. The next year where they took all those events off for Blast and then they came in all shit and losing to Furia and that, like, you must have been like, can I get some of that, please? Where was that? Where was that, Astralis?
Dude, just nuke. Like, nuke. I couldn't get past fucking nuke. That was a simple
every time.
Then I see them start dropping nuke. I'm like, come on, now's the time.
to fucking
I
Ents as well.
Dude, I bet when they lost to Ents, you were just triggered off the planet.
No, dude, it really was. I was super happy that, no joke, like I was super happy that the boys from Liquid made it because, like,
Yeah.
different than when I got booted from MIBR, I decided to join Liquid, to leave Liquid to
Yes.
come back. So I was happy that they were still in a position to win. But god damn it, was I frustrated that Astralis dropped as well level. Like they still were magnificent. They were Astralis, but watching Counter-Strike, they were making some of the mistakes that they wouldn't before make.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't believe that Zeus was looking that deep into how to beat Astralis, because every time he fucking lost to them, he would just message me on Twitter and say, "Stop fucking predicting us to win. You're the only reason we're losing."
Dude, I was trying everything.
He's trying to,
I believe in your
you made his case for him, Moses.
But that's how much I tried.
He joins EG. They lose like one of the first games. The first message I get is from Cirque, and he goes, "Zeus was right. Stop fucking predicting us to win." And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, him too?
Thing is, Moses, you know that common tactic. You need like a common enemy. You've got to like unite everyone against one person. Listen, if it has to be Jason O'Toole on Twitter, then it's got to be Jason. You know, sorry.
I'll take that hit. Take that for you, Zeus.
Oh, it's all good. I saw you kept predicting and we won. It's not you, not NEG. You just fucked me in Liquid. It's not
all right.
you.
It's a Liquid specific.
You.
Transferred over.
Right. Okay. What about this though? One thing I wanted to ask about is in this team, another aspect is because the team had been doing so badly, one of the players a lot of people wanted kicked was Stanislaw, the in-game leader. Because first of all, he's been in a lot of teams. He's kind of had the same career as Carrigan. He joins a team, they get really good and win the championship. And then 6-8 months later, it starts falling off. And then people think, right, you just have to kick him. And then he has to join another team. It's happened a bunch of times. So one thing people might forget is he was your in-game leader in Team Liquid originally, and that was actually the worst period of his career at that time. It didn't really work. Like, even though you had some good players, you never got to the major, you never did big runs with him particularly. You know, you had like one that was decent.
We had two or three finals with him, though. Like,
no, that was
New York.
But that was when he'd stopped being the in-game leader. That was when Nitro became the IGL.
Oh, you're right on that. I think it was, that's what...
So I wanted to know, though, what was that like reuniting with him? Because I even said, like, I wondered if that meant he was going to get kicked because you were joining, like, you'd have differences. But I think both of you even messaged me and said, like, no, actually, like, we've put that behind us. Like, we've kind of like fixed that aspect of whatever was the issue before, right?
Yeah, I think with Peter is just like one, we got us behind us. I remember the day it was at the London Major. I was still at Liquid. We were just in one of the back rooms scrimming. I went to get a drink and Peter was there and we talked it out and just solved it in there. So we had fixed it before, and then when the opportunity came, of course we brought it up again. We're like, remember that shit? We know it's gone, but just let's make sure we're still on the same page. And I say this not just whatever, but it's like we never look back. It's just been really easy to work. I think he's changed, I've changed in some ways, and it's just clicked. And that's for him getting kicked. I think it's so unfair. I do really appreciate the Kerrigan analogy because he's an in-game leader who won from coming from 1.6 already. Who used to watch Kerrigan and think he was a monster, even when he was almost a star player like level kind of guy. And when he moved over, and every time he get teams, it's I know what Counter-Strike is. When you join a team, everyone has full trust in you. They believe in the system. They're going to follow you. And for an in-game leader, the same as a coach, the moment we lose that, we're done. It's like we're dead in the water. We're not going to get our job done if people aren't following it. And I think that's what happened to Kerrigan last that I remember in FaZe, which was a gigantic one. And with Peter, like it almost got to the point of happening here. And again, it's just getting people on the same page. It's like, do you trust them or not? Like once people start thinking, do you think we're working for the same goals? Yes. Okay. Or since we're working for the same goals, if we made a mistake, do you agree? I was trying to get it right. Yeah. So as soon as people understand some of the very simple dynamics of how the team relationships work, things just get so much easier. And it for him, I'm sure, like again, him and all the other players, once they started understanding that, they got into this comfort zone of playing the way they want and knowing that people are going to follow and not being afraid to call something when shit needs to be called out and not afraid to do it, because when we call out shit, it should be just that. I'm saying it for your good and for my good. Maybe if we think I'm wrong, we talk about it and we get to it, but that's it. All right. And I think with Stanislaw, the biggest thing for him was how much he evolved as well from those days and how much more of a leader he is now, like in terms of just, I'm going to put plainly the strategy part. He's commanding. He's like, when I call a strat over him, he's like, if he thinks it's right, he's like, no, do this one. And there's time where he's like, no, this one I'm kind of hesitant. So he knows when it's time to be strict and when it's time to not. And when people are getting on, he's like, stop with this shit, cut it out. He's actually a leader. And so he should never be kicked from the team. He really is one of NA's great ones because you don't have as many.
Well, actually, on that line, I wanted to ask a follow-up to that, which is, that was something, listen, I've actually known Stanislaw just like as an acquaintance at events, because I've always been a fan of the guy. Like, I think he has talent, but the one thing I always thought about him was, and he admitted this to me himself, is in that back in the day, as you're saying here, like, he wasn't actually that good a leadership figure. Like, he had the strats, he could call shit, but he was like the guy who's like, well, that's just my job, I just call it, and then everyone else is supposed to do their job. He wasn't like a leader, like a figure where it's like Fallen. Like, it's like, he's got the charisma of a leader, like, he makes you want to follow him because he makes you believe you're going to win. He has a commanding presence. He himself even admitted he wasn't that good at that kind of thing before, and he definitely wasn't good at, like, addressing the public and having a public persona. Do you notice a big change there?
Yeah, definitely. Because I've always believed this leadership is a learned skill. Like, some learn it easier, but it's definitely a learned skill. Like, you have to learn how to command people with your voice tone, with leading through example will always be the number one thing for a leader. Like, if the moment you see me fucking up, you're not going to trust in me. But other than that, you're going to have to command. And being a leader is that. It's people putting trust in you to make the decisions. So you have to step up to the plate and make the decisions. You're not going to get all of them right, but someone has to do it. And the moment you make them with confidence, the chances of it going right are so much higher than if you do it doubtfully. I almost guarantee you failed if you don't believe, even if you don't believe in yourself. And that's kind of what we have to be. I have to be full of myself to the point where I believe I will not fuck up, even though when I am fucking up, it makes it look convincing that I'm not, so that people believe me.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
I will add on to this. I think over the past probably like 3-4 years, of all the players I can think of in North America, I've probably seen the most like personal growth out of Stanislaw than I think any other player in North America. Not in terms of his gameplay, not in terms of like in-game leading, but just like maturity and as like a human being. I think Stanislaw's been remarkable difference from where he was in 2016 to where he is now. So that's kind of cool to watch. My big question for you, coaching EG, one player I noticed that there's just been like almost not so much night and day difference, but probably the biggest change. Obviously, Tarek has been very impressive, the kind of resurgence he's had from the slump of last year. But Ethan, you seem to be, because for me, and Duncan will know this, we've always talked about this core over the past like year or two on the show. Ethan for me has always been like the biggest X factor of
the what if. Yeah.
Like if he's switched on, that team is unbelievably good. So how have you started to get consistent performances out of him? Because that's insane.
So again, part of my job as being a chameleon is I have to first understand I'm dealing with people, right? So in my early months with EG, I have to learn who the people are I deal with other than Stanislaw. Like, I knew Tarek from some of my MIBR passages. Maybe he would go to a barbecue at our house or something like that, but I didn't know how they were as people and as professionals. So understanding Ethan, the way that Stanislaw described him when I was joining, I think is correct. He's the in-game leader's best friend. He doesn't complain like most of the time. He's always giving ideas. He's really smart about his plays. He knows what he's doing. He's insanely skilled, and he's a good team player. He's willing to do all that stuff. And so how does a player like that not function was what was on my mind. And it just kept coming back to he's not comfortable. And what it comes to is Ethan is the kind of guy he has a way of playing it, and he likes to dictate how things should be played. Like, because he's so smart and so intelligent, he knows how these things so are. Like, he reminds me of a leash in one aspect of like that pure intelligence in that sense, where he knows what's going on. So he's thinking on so many levels and so many steps. If someone's doing something that he's unaware of, he's gonna mess up because he's gonna be out of his comfort zone, or something's gonna be going on where he's expecting A to happen and C happens, not because the other team did something different, but because we didn't react accordingly. So the moment he stepped up as well, a little bit more, and felt more comfortable too, again, bring the ideas he had or the ways he wanted to play or command his sights, and just started going, and they found the chemistry. Like him and Tarek on that banana on Inferno, they're insane. And he does like 50%, Tarek does 50. But the 50 where he's doing it, he knows what's going on and he's commanding it. The part where Tarek's going, he's like, okay, now it's my turn to listen. So he just needed to find that balance of imposing himself as well there, and as well as receiving. And I don't think even he realizes it, but the slow transition I've been trying to do with him has been that, and helping get there, right? And I think that's just released him, and his potential is insane for what that kid can do. Like, I've seen some sick things, no joke.
By the way, that map is one I wanted to ask you about, because if people remember, when EG Stanislaw first joined, that's how they won those championships and were beating Astralis. They were just always winning DOS 2, Inferno, but their Inferno, when they went into the slump, that became a dodgier map for them, actually. They had a whole bunch of games lost. I looked it up now. You are on a 10-map winning streak on Inferno, and this is who they're against, Moses. They're only against Gen.G, Liquid, MIBR, and Furia. There are 0 bomb teams in there. To win 10 Infernos in a row against that competition, that is legit as fuck. That is a map that can swing at all times either way. Yeah. That is a very hard map to have a big win streak on. So what changed? What are you focusing on Inferno? What's the secret right now?
This one, I give it to them. They are, again, it falls into following page. I'm not going to say I brought anything new or revolutionary. I changed 1 or 2 small little approaches and picks that we could do on T side. CT side, 1 or 2 small things. Changed maybe the retake here. But again, I was just getting on they already had one way. I'm like, okay, let's just switch it up because we've been doing it this way. CS is cyclical, right? So it's like you're doing one kind of way, you just change it to the next one. And sometimes it's going to come around. You keep evolving. So we just kind of adapted a little bit the meta, not too much because they already knew, but they have so many plays. They have like on each side they have 15 plays that they know how to do it themselves. The moment they remembered how to play together as a team, all those plays started flowing. There's no way I can come here and claim like, oh, I changed something that made us win 10 legit as fuck, like you're saying. Inferno's in 2 months and a half. There's no way I could do that. That's what was already there. They just needed to kind of release it a little bit. That to me comes on getting on the same page.
It helps when you have Ethan playing at this level of confidence too, where he's basically still playing like he's in the Krieg meta. Like he's one of those guys who will get to the top of Banana and he'll just take a peek into that B-bomb site and he'll just wait for the fight and wait for the duel. And at the moment, his individual level is so fucking high that he's winning it more often than not with an AK.
I'll tell you this about our team. That's something I can say I try to help. My mentality has always been, let's bring the game to them, right? Let's us go into it. Don't be scared to peek because, one, we're so highly skilled. I promise you, you'll never see us pussing out and going to fights. So this is cool. The finals of Blast, the last round, 2v2, that's Stanislaw, the comment from Peter was this: I'm not fucking scared of this kid. And he rushes the guy pit inside of smoke into like big pit. That's how the level of confidence where we're trying to aim for in our team. It's like, I don't care if it's the fucking final round of a tournament. I'm not scared of this fucking kid. I'll charge him. Like, I don't give a shit.
Very useful comms as well. That's I like that.
Hey, you know what's going on, right?
One thing that you must enjoy as well is like when you have Cirque as your AWPer. Listen, I'm not like Fallen's a very unique player, but their style of play where they're just like super mobile AWPers, super fast firing style, really like what do you see any similarities? What's it like to use Cirque?
Cirque is the 180 of device, right? Or device is that 100% consistent, will not over peak or do something like that. Cirque's opposite. He'll go for those peaks. And I tell him, like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing this, but at the same time, you're so fucking skilled. If you're feeling it, you go for that shit. I don't care because like players will have that feeling. Yes. It's one thing if he's doing it because he's frightened or something like that and he's over peaking. If he's on his game and he knows what he's doing, he wants to peek that guy because he thinks he's gonna kill him. Go for it. Look at what that kid does. Like the flicks he hits, the quick scopes, and the way the thing that reminds me the most about them is always gonna be the movement. The way they play with ladders and trains and any obstacle that you can circle around to like one fire, quick repeat, like crouch peek right side, then fall down. It's insane.
Great, yeah.
It's mental.
Agreed.
So you have to take advantage of that. So tactically, people might look and say, "Oh, he's not playing the most correct CS because he's gonna give some of those kills." But look at the amount of rounds he's gonna win us because of that. It's all a numbers game, and sometimes not always the most correct Counter Strike is the winning strategy.
Yeah, well said. Let's talk about another team then, because, I mean, we already discussed them in the original segment, but the team I really want to get your take on, especially now you're not an MIBR, is Furia. I want to know what you think about this team, because you know what? This is an example of a team where if people get too caught up in the jokes and think, I never give anyone credit, like, you're really missing the whole story. Like, when I'm actually being serious, I always give people full credit for what they do. So people probably know in the past, I used to think way back in the day in Immortals, Henny was like a bit of an overrated player, because the problem was he would have really crazy highlights because he had that really fast style, but the actual like consistency was terrible. Like, this guy could just disappear completely in a match. And as an AWPer, like, I hate that if I watch that because it's such an expensive gun. You have to keep given it by your teammates that save it. So I was very critical in the past of Henny. And Furia themselves, when they broke out and they beat Astralis, dude, that looked like a team where it was easy to say they won't do this again. Like you can't play that style and think it's going to work. But I tell you what, this upgrade when they've brought in Henny and his game looks better than ever, then how Art has literally, dude, this is like classic Fur. It's like, you know what he's going to do. You can't stop it. He's doing it all the time anyway. This team is legit now. I love watching them. One of my favorites to watch. So what do you think of the new Furia?
So, one, I have to give them props because of hard work together, right? They kind of stuck with the roster as much as they could. Like, they did one piece or another is going to end up changing. But I'm with you. As soon as, like, that Astralis win at ECS, I think it was as well in London, it wasn't like, yes, it was, don't get me wrong, it was super impressive the entire run. But, you know, it's a breakout run. It's kind of what people thought about us in the Face It Stage 3 where we beat, like, it's like, you have one of those and then we're still going to do good. Like, but it's not the same. People do catch on. You were reaching a whole new level. And the fact that they were able to stick together and make that level go, to me, shows that they are really good professionals. They're hardworking. They have chemistry as well between them. And Henny, I've always thought that, like, maybe you didn't, but I always thought that Henny was supposed to be the next Fallen, like the replacement. He was the guy that we were setting up to the day that Fallen wanted to hang up his boots, that Henny would go there. Ricardo used to say this more than me. And I knew how good he could be, but he needed the right environment for it, right? If you catch what I'm saying. And I think Furia puts that. So I really do value their team in that sense. I'm not really close to them, honestly, especially because during MIBR, it's normal that we're going to have, like, we're contenders.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do give them props. I think they're insane. I think that Art, people have to give him praise as well. Because not only did he do something that people said was going to be easily counter and make it not easily counterable, he evolved it where people are trying to copy him now. He has set his own pace, and his team believes in his style that much that they follow again, and it goes into that. You can see that people believe in that style that he's putting onto them. They're gonna lose a lot of matches with that style, but they're also gonna win a shit ton. So I get it, but I will say this without giving it away. I do know how to stop Furia, as you guys might have noticed. There is a method to their madness, and it's a 1-2 combo that you can stop.
The only thing is, how do you reliably get someone to freeze in the game and then tweet at them? Oh, sorry, you meant a real method, right? Okay, because that did work, by the way. What do you think, Moses?
We just got through that conversation.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
All credit to Furia. I think what they've done is great. I think it's fun to watch. I am still staying off the bandwagon so far. I'm not hopping on quite yet.
Okay.
I think when we return to LAN, I think this is one of the teams, along with a couple others, that we'll probably see struggle to most. Not because I don't think they're good players on LAN, but because historically this hyper-aggressive style of play, hyper-unpredictable style of play, is historically just never translated to LAN very well. This is the style like it
could be. I'll take just from your Jinx perspective. I'll take you on that. I think they will be good.
All right, let's throw some odds out there.
No,
let's get some CS20 level.
I'm gonna put them as a coming back. They're gonna be a dark horse in my book. They're one of those teams that can make an upset run, but I'll put them in the top 10.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I'd put them in the top 10.
Jesus Christ, we're really setting the bar low here.
No. What you're talking about is like the people. The teams are going to stop them, shit like that. I'm thinking you're putting them the way down.
No. He just means they're not going to like win events or something. You know, he just thinks.
I'll say this. I'll actually put something down on it. I think in their first 3 LAN tournaments back, I think they'll miss the playoffs at least twice.
That's such a weirdly specific.
But we're coming back to DreamHack Masters at NA and ESL 1 Cologne.
When we get back to LANs, not online play.
If they maintain the same roster, I'll take you on that.
Okay.
Well, we never know when LANs might be in 3 years. When the fuck?
Here's what makes that fun. Here's what makes that bet fun. Is because of Furia's style of play, dude, I could see either of you being right on that one. Like, these guys can beat anyone, and I think they could lose to everyone as well. Like, they're just, because that's what I love about the style of play, actually. It's funny because when they're at their best, they remind me of the old Immortals that Henny was in. They were like that. They were super explosive. If they wreck you, also good at Inferno, by the way. If they wreck you, they're going to wreck you. If they just fall apart, they're going to fall apart. It can happen. I wanted to ask, though, what do you think, Moses, about Art? Because when we were doing that Blast America Showdown thingamajig where you qualify for the final, I think it was Maniac found this, that if you looked at this stat for like opening rounds or whatever, he not only had the highest usage or whatever, like attempts at doing it, he also had the highest success rate. Like, that's why I say it reminds me of old school. That should be impossible. The idea is, like, think about basketball. If you take the most shots, you shouldn't make them all. You should obviously miss loads more as well. It's volume, right?
I think he's probably been, in terms of what he's been able to do, I think he's obviously such a huge part of their success, and he's probably the first person I've seen able to bring out this style and find this level of consistency with it, especially in online Counter-Strike, which is super impressive that he's been able to bust it out. However, I also think he's kind of part of the problem in a way because he's having that much success. I think they're really relying on it. And in the matches that I've seen where they do get countered or when Art does get shut down, this is what they need to take the rest of the online era, that however long it lasts. Furia's number one priority should be finding a plan B, because it's very obvious they don't have one. You know, when we were at BTS and watching the Road to Rio, the qualifier, when Liquid was able to counter Art and his plays early on Vertigo, his being aggressive, they just folded. You know, Art had 3 kills in the first half. His CT aggression didn't work out. Liquid shut him down, and then there was just nothing after that, nothing that they could build upon. So for Furia, that's my biggest fear. It's not that this style is necessarily an issue. It's the fact that this is the only style they have. They don't have a second gear. They don't have a plan B. So if it gets shut down, it gets shut down hard, which has always been a particular worry of mine for teams that are like that.
I see where you're coming from, Jason, and I think you're right. But I think this is the difference. I think from our point of view for the bet, I know that's them, and like I said, there is a counter to them. But it's not an easy counter. You have to practice them, and you have to play, and you think you know it, but it's not easy. Like, you have to go through repetitions to learn it. So I think that NA teams will stop Furia. Europeans are going to have a trouble with that. You can see it in a demo. When you're facing that level of chaos, when it's controlled chaos, it's a controlled chaos. They know what they're doing. It just looks crazy, but they do know what they're doing. Once you're facing that, you can study it. It's not the same because they change. It's not always the same pathing. It's not always like these little details. Oh, he's gonna be coming through right now. He just changes it up. You have to understand like the whole idea behind how they're trying to do it. And I think that takes a little bit more of a dry run to understand. I think they're gonna get easy. That's why I think that their dark horses, they can win, and I think they're gonna get far. But after that repetition comes, I think then it stabilizes again a little bit more, and then they have to reinvent themselves another step.
Well, you would know this better than I would, and I know you are probably different from most coaches we have in the North American scene. But is enough research actually being put into these online games at the moment? Like, let's say, like the level of scrutiny that a team will get if you're playing them in the semifinals at a LAN tournament, 6 months ago. That level of scrutiny isn't there right now. So it
isn't there right now. But I think the reasons for that are in online play, we're at home. People are able to evolve. Once you get into LAN and you're in that 6-week event streak, you don't have time to reinvent. You can go and study the fuck out of a team because they didn't have time to put in the work to get better. At home, you play one best of 3, you have another 4 hours to change that. So map by map, you're literally already fixing things. So we're putting in, like I can't say for other teams, I'll say for us, I'll watch every map that I think is possible to the fullest, but when it's time to brief my team, I'll go down a peg and just give a very more general overview because so many things can have changed just based on yesterday there was a match already evolved, today's a new one kind of a thing, and it's always the same teams. Because if it's a match against someone else, it's something, but you just play the same team 4 times in 4 competitions, like they have changed.
By the way, actually, keep going. What do you want to ask?
I was just going to see if there is some of that fatigue. Like, you guys have obviously played Furia, Liquid, all these guys, like just so many events right now. Like,
well, that's one thing. Listen, I'll pivot that same question. Basically, the downside of the Americas region and why it actually wasn't going to be as easy for EG and Team Liquid as I made out is when you play in Europe, like look at how many different winners of events there are in Europe. Like everyone feels like won an event and everyone's had a top 4. And that's why the rankings have been crazy the last few months. It feels like they just throw the names in a hat and then just turn it upside down. But in the Americas, dude, it's like the same 5 teams just are going to be the ones that have the competition for the win. Like, it's going to be maybe Gen.G on the outside, but otherwise it's going to be MIBR battling Furia and then Team Liquid and Evil Genius. And it's just, not only you're playing them in a million matches, like I said, that 10-game win streak, it's only those 4 teams. But then I'm sure in scrims, you're having to play the same teams again. So what is it like to play a million? Really?
That's probably the layout of the tournaments, but it's like, we're trying to scrim, but it's like this. Today is Group A, tomorrow is Group B. So the day we're playing, the other team is not. We can't scrim, right? The day that we have off, the other team is playing. So we only have the teams that are in our group to scrim. We're not going to scrim the teams that we're going to play our next match or might face again. So like scrim quality, we were getting. It reminds me of the LG days. We were getting by here on EG on 1-2 maps a day if possible, and so much more theory. That's what we're trying to survive on.
How many teams outside of the pro level in North America are you guys willing to play against? I know from talking to some other people, like the tier 2 teams that people are willing to play against is what, like I think it's Team 1, Triumph, and Chaos are like kind of like the three non-pro teams that teams are willing to scrim.
We go deeper than that. Like I said, it got worse to find scrims. I even joked about with the guys. I'm like, keep looking at the schedule because it might be last minute. I went to NNA. We have tier 1 Skype group, tier 1 and 2, and then tier 3. I went into the lower one to go find scrims. Like I went one step down into the rabbit hole over there trying to find scrims.
How'd that go? Was that fun?
Dude, when you message them, are you just like, is it like EG Zeus?
Like, no joke,
hey, let's get a scrim. And then they're just like, fuck off, dude. Stop fake nicking. Like,
dude, that's what I thought it would be like. But it's like, even in that level, it was hard because then those teams weren't practicing or they were off. I don't know what was going on. Once the Flashpoint teams left, it just went to shit for scrims over here. No joke.
Yeah, fair enough. That's one thing actually also I want to say, because I want to talk a bit about Team Liquid now. Because like I said before, I thought these guys are just going to win everything. So when they had the good Pro League run, I was like, this is exactly what it should be. If anything, Liquid should be the ones loving the lockdown in as much as they were getting their ass beaten by those top European teams. Now they can just clean up and get all this prize money. Aside from that first tournament, it's been really hard for these guys. Like, they've been doing that thing where early in the tournament, they look amazing. They're just 2-0 people. Elysia's having maps where he's like doing simple numbers on the server. When they get to the playoffs, though, they've had so many underwhelming games. And now listen, I will say one factor I want to throw in is that's an example of a team that should be worse online. Because if you have a bunch of sick aimers, try going from 9 ping to like 89 ping. It's going to be weird. You're just not going to hit that crisp headshot the second you come around the corner. It's a different game in that sense. But obviously, you've been battling them tons, Zeus. What do you think of Liquid at the moment?
It's hard to say that, like, without being inside that team anymore. It's hard to say what the problems are. We have some ideas and things like that. Playing them, I'm with you that they don't feel the same, but there's moments when they definitely feel the same. But it seems that they've lost that ability to kind of fight through it all, right? A little bit. I feel that when they're doing well, they're going for it. But once one bad round happens, or like that tilt factor or something like that, it seems to have gotten back a little bit. And this is pure speculation on my part because I don't know like what's going on in there. But that's playing against it. You can feel that one round you're playing one opponent, and then the next round is like something's different, and it's just changed. And we fall into that mistake of like sometimes it's too easy letting it go, but I've never seen it to that level, at least recently. Like the discrepancy between your best and your lowest level is really high right now, which is surprising considering all the amazing things they've done, all the tournaments, like the runs, and it was always the same lineup.
Yeah, I think Liquid's in a really tough spot because I mean, even like Zeus said, I don't necessarily even think they're playing against their other opponents. I think their biggest competition at the moment is themselves, which is a scary cliche to have for a team that doesn't have leadership. Like that's always been the knock on this team, especially since Taco and Zeus left. You've basically got Stewie as an emotional leader, but outside of that, like no one, like Nitro has now stepped down from an in-game leader. Dren isn't a leadership coach or isn't a leadership person at the coach position. Twist isn't that. Naf isn't that. Lige probably should be, but he's not that. So they're in a really weird position. I'm very worried about how they get out of it because I don't even think they know how to do it at this point. And I think between the transition into Stewie as the in-game leader, we've seen a lot of people struggle. Like Nitro is going from being that leader to now having to be an individual player who's actually performing adequately at the professional level. So they have so many question marks going on up in the air. And now you also have the added thing of the online era for a team like Liquid who's been playing in every top tournament for the past 3 years. It's going to be an equal drag. There's going to be less focus, less motivation because it's just natural when you're playing this much online Counter-Strike. So I think they're in a very interesting spot. And if they come out of this like unscathed at the end of it, I'm going to be extremely impressed. But I have to imagine like if they have bad results at Cologne, even though it's online, I think that's got to be the last straw. I think they're at that point where like there's not a whole lot of things they can do. Sitting around and waiting is no longer an option. And for me on the outside, I hate to say it, that is kind of like what it feels like they're doing at the moment, is just sitting around and waiting, hoping that the fortunes turn, hoping that the individuals come back to a new level.
And here's the thing, even though, listen, This is a tough move to make if you remove anyone from this team, especially because, unfortunately, the most obvious player is Nitro, because he spent so many years as an in-game leader now. It was a long time since he was like a star player, a top player individually. His job was be the IGL of a team, with Zeus a little bit more tactical, maybe this other one was a bit more free-flowing. And the problem is, you've seen it with a lot of players who've done this before. If you try becoming the in-game leader, it just changes your whole game. You think about the game differently. So the problem is, statistically, he's the player you'd remove. But at the same time, he's also the player that's been there for 5 years. He's the guy who's been there forever. So it's like, just to remove that player, that's not like a business decision you make overnight, because this guy is the face of your team.
Franchise. He was there at the start. Him and Elige are the two holdovers.
That's the feel-good story. Yeah, exactly. The idea he's
not
still
only
there.
that, like being inside, I think I can share this. Nick is amazing. He's one of those players who has that kind of taco quality where he's the glue for that team. Like in a bunch of just forget that CS, just how people interact with themselves inside. If someone has a problem with someone, he's the one that can make it happen, because sometimes people will not talk amongst themselves. Sure. And so he's the guy who, like, he was the guy who was, how did he become an in-game leader? He was the one that was willing to sacrifice himself for that and to become an op. And he excelled at these things for a while. And so he's always the guy who's willing to try the things there. How do you remove the guy who's trying? Like, that's me from the outside. I have zero information what's going on in there anymore. But it's, if I was like, if it was still in my day, how can I look to my player and be like, you're trying everything, but it's not going to work? And I even told him this. I don't know if I should mention it, but it's like, when you relieve yourself of the in-game leader position, you're going to put a target on your back, even if unwrongfully so. It's how it's going to work. From the fans and from everyone, they're going to have an excuse, because people are still really set on this whole role thing, which is, in my opinion, used to be a lot more true than it is now, right? But it happens, and now how they get away from that? Oh, I wish them the best. I really do, but I honestly don't know what's going to happen with them. What would you guys do? Would you guys look at a roster swap, or would you not?
Yeah, I mean, I have an easy one that I think Duncan and I both have probably supported a couple times on the show, but I think the first move is Kassad. Like, how is Kassad not on the team?
Yes,
how's he just sitting out there in the? What's happening? I feel like I've gone insane. That's the first move I make if I'm Team Liquid. Is I talk to Kassad and I try and get him in. If you want to talk players, I think there's a couple different ways you can approach it. I think one way would be to go to Nitro and say, look, we're gonna put you on the bench. We don't want to trade you. We want you to be part of this roster, if that's actually the case. But say, we're gonna set you aside for 2 months. Do what you have to do. Take a couple weeks off, relax, recenter yourself, start deathmatching, work on your individual level, forget about being an in-game leader for right now, and just get yourself back up to speed and take your time doing it. We're gonna bring this guy in for the time being, and we'll reassess the situation in 2 months. And if you want to leave, we're gonna facilitate that. If you want to come back and you're at a great level, we'll try you right back out. And maybe that opens up some complications, but I think those are things you can deal with down the road. For the moment, I think you just have to get things going if you're Team Liquid. That team desperately needs something positive. They need some kind of a deep run. They need some kind of a tournament win. And I just don't see it happening at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. I think the other tough thing as well is, right, it feels now, because of the online era, like there's all this talent in America. It's like, obviously everyone's loving Grim at the moment. Even at Flashpoint, we had players like Dapper, Infinite were having good games. These guys were having like breakout games. The problem is this, right? Even if you think you should remove a Liquid player, to remove a Liquid player and put Grim in, who basically has no tier 1 LAN experience, that's an insane gamble. And what? Because he was really good online. Like, I'm not hating on the guy. He looks like a real talent. But the problem is, people like that, it sometimes takes a year just to get your shit together online, to figure out what it's like to play, Astralis at 9 a.m. in the morning.
And MIBR. That was my gamble. That was one of my downfalls. I promise you that, because I've said this in the interview, that was my gamble. That was the one that I tried, and it didn't pan out. But like, how do you remove, even if it was Lucas, like through the history of MIBR, it just comes back to you. And some players, as good as they may be, like I said, it's a different thing with playing at this level for sure. So I get that.
In your defense, I think that was a fine gamble, because it was very obvious at that point that Lucas wasn't the solution either. Like, Lucas wasn't your fifth. That was obvious. So, I mean, there's no reason in my book not to bring someone.
I still stand behind my decision for everything I did. I did it because I was trying to get it right there and help.
Let me ask you something about that then. Listen, you're not in the team anymore, but and listen, to be fair, Mayan's not playing at the top level at the moment. So I think it's fairly safe to just give some thoughts about this, right? When you brought Mayan in, What was the idea? What were you trying to do with him? Because the problem is, if the narrative from outside did look a bit like the old NIP situation, where it's like whoever the fifth player is never gets all their spots, they're always in the top position. But every time, I always said this, even though his stats were really bad, if he ever had a highlight round, it would look sick. He actually looked like he had some pretty good skills. So what was the thought in trying to use him in the team?
I think the initial thought, I'll go by mine, right? My initial thought wasn't as much as crazy as the sound, wasn't as much as us mold him, was him mold us, bring some new habits onto us, bring some new life, bring some new things. And in the beginning, like, I think that a small part of it was a timing, because I brought him on, it was like 1 week before the player break at the end of the year. So he had a taste what the life was, went to break and came back, and you kind of lose that hype, that honeymoon phase, and people do get back into some old habits really quickly. So with him, as much as that was tried, I do see what you guys are saying. Like in the end, it did end up being him taking up some of the shitty roles and some functions, but it wasn't all that. He also wanted to try it. He was like, I want to try and be better. I know I can do this, but then like the whole Argentinian clash thing, everything like that, there were so many factors that made things not go as well as we had hoped for, and we had seen glimpses of.
Did that end up being a bigger deal, the fact that he wasn't Brazilian?
I think just on a cultural sense of how he was as a person, what the things he were used to. We're always jumping around, yelling, talking crazy shit in the house, everything like that. And he reminds me a lot of like my boys in the U.S. A lot more like grew up with Counter-Strike, a lot more centered, like pure logical in his sense. Likes to do his thing. I'll play my game when it's done. I'll play CS. Like he did try to get that Brazilian thing going, but it's not natural. So it was forced. So maybe even that helped as well, because he's trying to bring on a new personal life and a new professional life at the same time, right? A new level of everything. So he definitely tried, but I'm not going to say it was 100% natural. He knows this. I know this. We all know it.
Moses, what do you think of the new MIBR?
I think they're fine. I think TRK is probably the best shot they have at finding a permanent fifth out of between him, Mayer, and Lucas. I think TRK's looked much better. I think K&G is improving, but I mean, I don't know. It's so hard because I think most of my criticisms are kind of colored by the fact that I have MIBR as like a championship quality organization. Like that's a team I want to see going deep into the playoffs. So for me, like I don't care what your lineup is. I don't think MIBR is doing well enough for kind of the legacy of those players and that brand and that organization. But I think TRK is at least a good first step. Here's what scares me the most is MIBR at some point is going to have to make the transition to the next generation of like Brazilian players, right? Or the next generation of players. Like, I don't know how much longer Fallen and Fur realistically think they're going to be playing and competing. I think Taco Younger can probably continue on a little bit longer than those guys. But at some point, they need to be bringing someone in to groom them to take the reins. Like, this is now the era of Fallen's career where there should be like a protege within the team that he's passing information onto for a year. He's teaching how to be a leader, the next Brazilian in-game leader. And I don't see that happening, which is worrying for me. So not only are they not having success in the moment, but they're also not setting up any of the players that are within that team to have success in the future. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest downfall of MIBR because, listen, I know the organization has told us not to call them made in Brazil, but, like, you can't really go and get an American roster to play under the MIBR banner. So I don't know. Sure. I don't know what the process is from here. I don't understand anything about that team or the org at the moment.
What do you think, Zeus?
It's hard to speak on them because I have so much information, right? And I don't want to. No, it is. Come on, let's just say, like, I've been there, like I grew up. Like, it's hard because if I say something, people are going to construe it as 100% truth, and that's my truth, right? It's not going to be everyone's. I think that TRK, I'm 100% on board. I think that he was a fix, and even me not being there, it did help them because Dead may not be a coach, but he is their hype man to the level that I can never be, like the passion he has for those guys. So I think that those moves are right. As for MIBR future, it really is hard. That was always one of my issues. I'll just say it. I wanted to go back international way long ago in the beginning because it's hard to be locked down to a region. And it's not even that. Like, we were locked down to a region where people just buyouts were coming out of the numbers were coming out of their asses. So
and there's different rules for the buyouts as well.
Buyouts and 5-year contracts are just coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, so we like not only did we were locked to a limited pool, right? We do have talent here, but it's like it's much better to have a bigger talent pool, and we were the ones we wanted we couldn't get. So it is hard. So it's not easy. I don't know how their transition. I think that Fallen, like especially Fallen, I'll bring him. He's so gifted at this game and his level of knowledge. He could play this for as long as he wanted. How long his motivation is going to be for that? That's on him, like on how things go and in the future. If everything gets back to winning, who doesn't want to stay? But I don't know how much he can, with how much he's accomplished and how much he's done, how much he's going to be willing to. I just hope that they do leave a successor because MIBR is such a gigantic thing for Brazil and Brazilians. Like they are a beacon of hope for so many people. I'm not even joking.
Does the rise of Furia and like the fact that they are I don't know how many people in Brazil probably consider Furia to be the better team of the two. I know MIBR has a massively larger fan base, but do you think Furia taking that, potentially taking that top spot away from them has hastened, I don't know, has it sped the process up of them
no. Of them going away? Definitely. I think it brings fire.
Okay.
I think it actually goes the other way because if you're so far ahead in a way, then you have no motivation, right? Because like it or not, to become the best in the world, we used to say this. First, I had to be the best player in my neighborhood, then the best player in my area, then my city, then my state, then my country, and everything like that. So if you're no longer the uncontested number one in your country, there's two ways to look at it, of course. There's the way where it's like, oh, I've done what I need to, but I know the passion that these guys have, the fire that they have. I know that's not how they take it. Furia competing against them makes them want it more and gives them more life. I can promise you that. Because they want to, everyone's ego is going to be that we helped start this show, we want to finish this shit strong, right? Kind of that kind of thing. Sure. As the problem for me is exactly like you guys are saying, if it comes earlier than needed, or if something happens unexpected, or one player quits, or like there's a big fight or something like that, where do we go? There's always options, but if it's not the options we want, then it can get really complicated, like especially on a motivational factor.
Yeah.
A player I wanted to ask about is Gen.G because it's interesting. At first, when he was in the team, it looked like he was having some issues at some points in time. He was a bit lost. Recently, at times, he looks like the best player. But even then, I've noticed he's so on and off as a player. If he's on, he can literally just look godlike. He's hitting everything, no scopes. He's going fucking crazy. He obviously literally has had halves like this. And then sometimes he swaps to the other half. He just has a quiet game. It's just not that. Who is this guy? Explain him to us.
Dude, G, I've known him forever, but I've been close with him the last months when I was in my BR, like since he's joined. I never had that full-on contact with him. As much as I'd seen him on lands, I was never part of his teams or something like that. I came from an older generation, so like he was always one step behind in that sense. Like he was still coming up. I was already in part of the tier 1 here in Brazil for the time and things like that. Who he is as a person, I have no problem in saying this. To me, G is one of the most awesome dudes I know. He has a harsh personality. He's straight, he's direct, and sometimes even the thoughts are wrong. But he is what he is, and he knows it, and he tries to be fair in his sense of what it is. So towards the team, he calls out shit. No, if I was saying shit, he's like, Zeus, you're fucking up on this. If Fallen's fucking up on something, like Fallen, you're doing that wrong. He doesn't care who you are or what you did. He'll be that guy. He's the guy who also sometimes doesn't express it the best way, but he's willing to do everything for the team. Like he ultimately gets to that point where he's the guy who, I'll be the second opera, I'll be the first, I'll be an entry kill, I'll be a lurker. Like he's already tried four of those roles in my time in MIBR alone, and he hasn't been there like as long as all these people.
Sure.
So to me, he's an amazing asset. Like G's career was really fucked by himself, first off, from all the stupid shit he's said, but from that whole thing, because like as well, he's coming onto the older side of the players, and his peak form is insane. Like, had he maintained the team and kept the level going, like the respect and self-confidence that he would have gained in the community and to himself, I have no idea what the ceiling for this guy would have been. It's still insanely high now, and he can do amazing, but I still think that he needs a little footing in there. Like, no, MIBR is a tough place. Like I said, the crowd is gigantic, the history from the players, it's tough for us to manage ourselves in there. It's just, it's how it is. So it's never going to be a knock on G. I think he's insane addition to any team. Like if he had known English, so many teams would want that guy.
I want to. Well, speaking of which, I had a chance to see him when I was out in LA. His English is getting much better. It was actually really cool to see, or hear, so to speak. What can you tell me at all? What is one confusion I have with G is he's on a team with Fallen. They're both oppers. I feel like they like to double op frequently as well. But how does it go between, like, if there's only one op on the team, does it always go to Fallen? Does it always go to K? And like, you know, I just kind of wonder how K&G is going to find a place in the team. I don't actually. He was great with the Krieg. I don't actually put a whole lot of stock in his, his AK or M4 on a world class level.
Sure.
But that seems like there's a little bit of confusion of saying we're bringing K&G, with a great opera on Immortal, great opera on all of his past teams, and now we're bringing him in with the best opera of all time from Brazil.
Yeah, it definitely is a complicated situation, and like putting out more than probably should, but it's one of those things of not having options out there. Because if you want the role, ideally, me as a coach, you'd go for it, but you have to make do what it is. And I was pleasantly surprised by K&G. Like I said, he's another, maybe not the flashiest rifle, but he can handle his own, definitely, right? It's about comfort as well, a little bit there. As to who the op goes first, it's hard. So in the beginning, we tried a lot with K&G having it, then Fallen's going to have it again, and then it's a mix of both, and then we're going to try to do both. Like it was a hard trial of mix and error. Ultimately, what I think it comes down to is round and situations. There's going to be maps where it's more favorable to have one, where it's going to be the other. It's just you were put in a position where you have to make it work, so there is no clear-cut solution. It's try to figure out the best situation in between.
Right, we've done a pretty long one, so I reckon we just wrap it here. So I'm just going to say one thing. Zeus, Carayo. It's the only time I ever said it correctly. Just for you, Zeus.
It sounded weird with you saying it correctly, Duncan.
I know. It's because people don't know that, by the way. I made that like a meme where I know I'm saying it incorrectly. I'm saying that to trigger you fans as well, obviously. I know it's not really Corallo. It's just funnier if I say it like that. Because then they're like, he's not even saying it right. It's like, yeah, that's the point, to make it. I don't know if you noticed, but some of this is on purpose. Anyway, that's the end of the episode. This video was kindly supported by Jack Hanna, Dean Tanglis, Soliko, Bobby, Spencer Green, Istar, WhattaThings, Xinged, Alexander Rao, Tobias Bernasconi, JDubs, the Puyallup Tribe, Jensen Goh, and of course, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you'd like to ask a question in one of those monthly video AMAs I do. Do you want teasers? See who the upcoming guests are for my work? Maybe you want to be part of one of those donator discussions with me each month. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today by the description box link to Patreon below.